All right, the camera, the camera. Oh my gosh! And I'll show you who's late, Sky Dog. Me by 1 minute. Shut up. I was raised in Latin America. You should be happy that I'm not 30 minutes late every time. How's it all going, everybody? Apparently, this is just what we're going to have to deal with. My bald head. You're so laughing in general Asian talk. I see. When you're a proud one? What? A win. Oh, it's Arcanes. Yeah, all right. The crew is here. I apologize, by the way, for the god-awful amount of spelling errors and weird mistakes. We'll get into it. But I noticed one of the verses I was quoting was significantly different in the ESV that I used than the NIV I was raised on. So it might have seemed a little strange. I'll have to fix it in post, and we'll talk about it when we get to it. But awkward. When you're a professional pirate, you don't have to wear a suit. Yeah. Who are we pirating? We do pirate stuff in Fox. Now I want to play Foxhole. I'm not gonna lie. The war is almost over. The collies are collapsing, man. Those guys are losing their minds. Feel like I'm gonna have to go collie to show them that their shit is in fact not underpowered. They're just underutilizing it. Also, the cat is on the printer and very much judging me. Snap sunglasses into place. Yeah, I know. I'm trying to figure out why it's doing it so much today. I don't think it's just my bald head. Here, let's cut my head out of the picture, see if it fixes it. Come on. Oh my god, I'm being bald shamed. Now, let's see, when I bring my head back in, what does it do? Yeah. Lean forward. I think we're okay. We found the sweet spot. What are you doing down there? Darn cat. Anyway, crazy time getting this stuff up to you guys. I don't know. God must be trying to talk to someone because I kid you not, like my computer tried to explode today when I realized that the lesson wasn't going up again. More technical issues. In this case, user error combined with technical issues. My user error. I accidentally put it up on the wrong Sunday. Monday. Apparently. And when I went in to change it, I couldn't remember my password at work. So I had my wife do it. And then my computer tried to murder itself. It felt like life was too much for it. There were too many children around it, too much bouncing. Just try to commit seppuku right as she was trying to type in the passwords.
No, it's like after I got in, I was about to click update to update.
Oh, you were that close?
I was so close, and then went.
It's like I was struck by a demonic force.
The kids were far away from the TV, the computer. They were away. The animals were away. It just fried. The mouse wasn't working. The keyboard wasn't working.
Yeah.
I unplugged it. I turned it back on. Have you tried turning it off and on again?
Yeah. We went through the whole stage. Keep in mind, that was just today. I had technically to upload this darn thing. I must have stayed up till 1 or 2 in the morning last night before.
The night before.
The night before. No, it was last night.
No, it was last night.
It was last night. Just to get it to upload. We just what it was horrible. Like I accidentally might have forgotten what day it was come Saturday morning. So I was trying to it was
Saturday evening, right?
Well, Saturday morning and evening. Because I started panicking because I'm like, I had some time before work. That's usually when I get stuff done. And I was like, oh, I got to get my creepy video up. Oh, shoot, I got to edit some crap on that. Oh, it was doing that thing where it was getting really bright because of my bald head. I had to do some adjustments. And I was late by 1 minute. Sky Dog feels very accomplished.
He was the one that was sitting there for like 30 minutes waiting.
He just so he could say that he was here before me and I was late. I was watching you when you were watching me, man. This time we were looking at that one guy waiting. I know it was you and not the FBI this time. But yeah, so I admit it, I am so pretty. And so yeah, this comes Saturday, I'm rushing because I realized, because I've been working the Fridays.
Wow, you're working so hard. You can't talk
about
working so hard.
Today wasn't so bad, but the days leading up to Saturday were pretty rough. I mean, not crazy rough. I've had a lot worse, but there was a lot of spiritual attacks going on. And I just remember Friday night, I didn't do anything. I just collapsed and died. And then had really horrible sleep because my kids couldn't sleep.
We both had horrible sleep.
And they couldn't get her to sleep. And then it was nightmarish. So no work got done Friday night, which was the original plan. So Saturday morning, I was trying to cram, if you will. And then I realized, to my horror, that it was Saturday and tomorrow, the day after, was Sunday, and I didn't have the lesson up either. And I'm like, so I'm trying to get both things done at the same time. I have the video edited, but I knew it would take hours to upload. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to quickly get the lesson uploaded. And I do it, and it doesn't upload. It just sits there forever trying to upload, but never uploading. I don't know if you have that problem with your episodes sometimes, Skydog, but my internet's so bad around here that it'll get into this state where it's forever uploading, but never actually upload. Like I've tried, like, it's not just that it's slow. We left it on for like a whole day. Once my wife just watched it constantly while I was at work, and it never went up. And then I reset it that night, and it finished in 5 minutes.
And you collapsed all the.
And I had to collapse again. Right. So of course it's doing its thing. And I was already 10 minutes late for work. And wife and I started fighting over something. And I made it worse. She made it worse. Kids started crying. That was Friday. Oh, man. Friday. No, it was Saturday morning, babe. Oh, Saturday morning. Yeah, because yesterday was Sunday. Today's Monday. Stuff. Again, it was more spiritual attacks. It really was. And I couldn't upload anything. I had the video edited.
It was Friday night, but we were fighting.
Because I was a little bit, but we were fighting that morning on my way to work. Because remember, I was stressing out trying to get that out. And stuff, family stuff, like extended family stuff, and things were coming in. And because I couldn't
here too.
Yeah, and I was already 10 minutes late, and I have a 30-minute drive to get to work.
Yeah, because you messaged me during.
So I didn't have time to quickly get the YouTube stuff set up so I could upload the YouTube as I went to work. So I ended up getting nothing done and being 15 minutes late to work because I got stuck behind slow people on a 2-lane road.
After an argument.
Oh yeah, it was the worst. And then Saturday was such a long day, lots of work, but no extended family drama. If you never read their emails, we actually finally learned that lesson not too long ago. But unfortunately, let's just say some of it's harsh enough that it'll come back on us like PTSD every now and then. Probably is PTSD.
It is PTSD at this point.
I mean, not like soldier PTSD, like you wake up screaming in the night. It's more like every now and then I realize we're having the same conversation about the same thing and having the same anger.
We get our bingo cards out.
The horrible bingo. And you realize you're just running for the same crap over and over again. It's happened less and less since we've cut some people out.
A lot less.
Whole lot less. There was I know we need to get started, but it's kind of fun having you guys here. And I wanted to explain the whole situation, why the the Grizzly Files podcast didn't go up. Oh, and right, because Friday night we actually did the game podcast. That's why I didn't get any work done Friday night.
It was after the stream. What happened?
We were.
No, it's before the stream. Something happened.
No, it was after the stream. We couldn't get to sleep. Yeah. I always tell my mom not to read their emails, but does she listen? No. Yeah, it's hard. If she really needs like I don't know if your dad's still in the picture or whatnot. I don't want to pry, but it really needs to be a husband leading, telling her not to read it. Like a son's not going to be able to convince her. She,
like manually take the phone away.
Sometimes.
Put it on silent and stuff.
Oh, I still remember the first time I hung up on my father. That was an interesting day.
You did talk about that on the stream.
Yeah, I did. I don't need to repeat it here. We'll start our bingo cards up again. But yeah, that was the whole debacle. And I have that YouTube, the Grizzly Files video ready to go. It's just needs to be uploaded and stuff. I'll probably get that done either before bed or wake up early because I still gotta go. Because to top it off, the way my schedule worked out is I have split weekends. Of course I do. And it's split out to the point where I have a 6-day work week, but I'm not paid more for it because I had closer days off beforehand. It never feels nice because those closer quote unquote days off were still split. No, wait, we had a full weekend, didn't we? We actually got lucky. We had 2 days off in a row.
Yeah. And when that happens, you work 6 days in a row.
Yeah.
And then the following week becomes a split week, and we don't know when we'll have a.
Yeah. Oh, did I post? I didn't post the. I should post that I'm actually streaming maybe before 10 minutes in. Look at YouTube trying to lie to me. You see that? I know both Art Gains and Skydog are here, and it said someone popped in, and then 2 people left. Bull. Why do you try to play these mind games with me? YouTube. Oh, I get it. The government person came in who watches us and went, oh no, he has let's bring down the mood quickly. I know who you are, FBI guy. All right, we'll get started.
What is this numbers game?
More like you boob. Skydog. My wife's boobs are here. Don't make boob jokes. You. Oh man. All right. Speaking of you boobs.
You stirred my son.
Apparently. All right. We should probably actually get started on the Sunday school lesson. Just so you guys know, I wasn't being lazy. Crazy stuff was happening. And thanks to my work schedule. Of course,
something crazy would happen because
it's a pretty intense lesson. And I'm also mad at myself for not going over it one more time. I thought I had already done it, but apparently I missed like whenever you see, if you read it and it says verse in parentheses, that's actually a note to myself to put because when I'm going full blast, I don't have time to look up the verse. You lose if you write. Skydog probably knows. Art Gains probably knows. I'm speaking to the choir. If you stop with your flow as you're writing to go put down a note or put down a verse reference, you'll often lose your train of thought. You'll lose the flow state, if you will, and it'll be that much harder to start. So I usually leave that for afterwards. And so you might have noticed there'll be sections that just say verse in parentheses, and that's what happened. I can't believe I missed it. Oh, it's so embarrassing. But you know what? We're going to get into it. We're going to face the embarrassment because though I did entertain my children with some video game playing, I have done nothing else today but this work and food. Probably should have done a little less food. So
also, of course, something with trying to delay the Sunday school lesson, distract us from everything.
Yeah, so And my kids really needed that attention. There's no way they would have let me get the errors fixed in time. So you're just going to have to wait on that one. All right. So let's see here. And is it working? Looks like it's working. Okay. So, oh, hey, look. I think this angel actually has a third foot. To be fair, maybe the AI is just tapping into an angel description I don't know about. No, okay, I think that's just a cloak shaped like a foot.
I'm not going to make that joke.
Okay. Yep, so here is our Christmas lesson. Lesson 18, bloody sacrifice and victory. You know, I realize some British people might take offense to that. It's a description. Okay, it's not my fault you guys decided to make a description a cuss word, freaks. It's like someone declaring that the color yellow is now the new F word. Fuck you, yellow. Speaking of yellow, what are you doing? It's a falling star. All right. So are we gonna get coffee like you promised, or are you just gonna? I've asked for coffee multiple times, and she keeps telling me, "Yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, I'll do it." And then, funny thing, the coffee never gets made. It's like
I'm gonna go make that. Why does the star keep falling?
I need energy, woman. Christmas time is here. Take your time. Christmas time is here, and now is the time. Oh, Christmas time is here, and now is the time. Oh, this is gonna be rough. No, I'm thinking I don't want time in the sentence twice like that. It bothers me. Now is the time of victory. God's anointed, the Messiah, the one who will crush the serpent's head and punish the rebellious watchers and their abominations, has come. Christmas is a holiday that transcends the ages, and as we have already explored, has the power to halt the devil's schemes in their tracks. It wasn't always the beautiful affair we know today. In fact, Christmas was an amalgamation of the Christ Mass and also a holiday that looked much more like Halloween, with drunken parties and a form of trick-or-treating until the 1900s. You've probably heard about that, by the way. I mean, you know, the too lefty scabbard to a really big sword. So, God, there goes the stupid light game again. Let me try to hide my head and see if that fixes it. But you've probably heard of that before. My uncle's actually kind of really focused on it. And let me help save you. I think we brought this up before when we were talking about Boniface, Saint Boniface. That original Christmas, which was attached to the Christ Mass, was pretty much an abomination. It was a pagan holiday coming over from Roman era. It looked a lot like Halloween, as I said, except instead of children trick-or-treating, you had full-grown adults who would go to rich people's houses and demand free food. And if they didn't get it, they'd tear the place up. How nice. And everyone would get drunk. Incidentally, this is the holiday that George Washington was crashing when he crossed the Delaware. It wasn't the Christmas, like, you know, it wasn't like a bunch of Hessian German dudes sitting around thinking about mom and dad and the girlfriend they want to have a life with and all the rest, right? No. There was a reason why the Hessians were all drunk. It's because it was this old Christmas. And this is what the Puritans wanted to outlaw because it was a shit holiday. And it was in many ways, I would consider a devil's holiday because it was lampooning and slandering Christ's name, as I say in the next paragraph. But there was this change that happened in the 1900s where God basically takes back the term Christmas. And that's the holiday we know about. The concentration on family and love, and like my personal favorite, the fact that if you're not with family, you feel like a loser because you are a loser. Sorry, I can't help it. Like, what even in the most corporatized Christmas movie, you know, shameless cash grab, it's almost always family themed in some way, right? You trying to get what's the I'll be home for Christmas mentality, right? even when the Jews were subverting the holiday, right, they still had to have all the family stuff involved. I mean, imagine the frustration that they must have had on some level, these little Jewy dudes trying to convince white people to kill themselves and become sterile and all the rest and take God out of the holiday, that they had to put up in the White Christmas movie they made, that they took Christ out of completely, right? They still had to include this beautiful picture of these white dudes getting married and not running off being losers anymore and having kids all around them, right? This image of like 12 kids around each one of their Christmas trees, right? That they had to go that far to be subversive. They had to be that positive. The only thing they took out was Christ's name, basically, and then had some weird imagery. Some of the songs that were weird. Like, what was the theater? What do you guys remember that movie? Am I old? I know Skydog's older than me. White Christmas. It's a musical. My sister used to love it. And I just remember this is something about the theater. The theater. Oh, come on. Age gracefully, Skydog. Just accept it. Anyway. Right. So, this beautiful thing happened in the 1900s where they started to take the holiday back and make it concentrated on family. And basically, you went for this period where parents wanted to bless, love on their children, and they wanted an excuse to do it, and they chose Christmas. You had that whole, the Scrooge, that guy, right? That whole, what is the name of that? I can't think of it, but that whole, thank you, that whole play and all that was a huge.
See it. City with
they did a great job with that. That was a really good play.
Really great.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, random. But that
pregnant with our oldest.
That play was a huge shift to pushing people to thinking that going from we get drunk on Christmas to we get together with family and we have a big meal and we think about Christ, we think about giving and goodwill and all this stuff. It's huge, right? That it's amazing to me what literature can do, what God can do with the right piece, the right beauty, and the shift is dynamic. Like I said, it basically looked like modern day Halloween. Like even All Hallows Eve used to have more religion involved with it. I mean, there is still religion, just dark religion involved with it now. And what is it? Just a big obnoxious party. They've taken all the kids out of it, right? It's no longer even kids going trick or treating and being tricked to dress up like demon gods and shit. But it used to at least have, it used to at least have that child element. But man, Halloween, there was no one trick-or-treating in my town. I don't know about you guys. It was just a bunch of parties for a bunch of old boomers and shit. Like, it was disgusting. And that's what it's become. It's become the witches' holiday, completely unholy. And it's really entertaining to me that God was able to subvert and take that holiday that it was and completely turn it into the anti-evil holiday, right? As I brought up with Boniface, Christmas tree symbol against human sacrifice, where Boniface goes in with his guys, stops a human sacrifice, a slave boy from being sacrificed to Thor, cuts down Thor's oak in the middle of all these shocked Germans, like what is this crazy dude doing, and plants a fir tree there, an evergreen, because it represents Christ never dying, never goes through seasons, right? And that's where the first Christmas tree came from, cutting down a freaking oak to a dark god that was about to be a bloody oak for more sacrifice and putting, bam, a tree that never goes through any seasons representing Christ in its place. That's why, star on top, angel on top. It's beautiful. Love it. They hate it. They can't stand it. And that's what makes me sad about guys like my uncle who are, pretty hardcore and great in a lot of ways, but they can't see past what the holiday used to be. Right? And it should at least be an eye-opener that our enemies hate it so much. That should be an eye-opener, right? They wouldn't be freaking out so much about it if it was their holiday that they were subverting Christ's name with, right? They wouldn't be freaking out that much about it at all. And the best subversions they've ever been able to come up with was, convince them to spend too much money on their kids and go into debt or something, right? You know, too much on the presents, not enough on God. That was the best subversion they could come up with, and it's hilarious. Love it. But we'll get back into the thing. Christmas is by far my favorite holiday, and I haven't been able to celebrate it properly. When I looked up the history of it, I fell in love with it all over again. It's more than just the standard story of Christians taking over holiday. It's taking over the devil's holiday and turning it completely around into something completely beautiful and anti-evil in every sense. Everything. And even the pagan elements are slowly being weeded out. Chestnuts on an open fire. Have you seen anyone who even does that anymore? Yule log? Yule what? Says all Gen Alpha and Gen Z. Like, you don't see mistletoes anymore. Right, you don't see mistletoe. I mean, we could argue maybe the reefs have some pagan imagery to it, or we could also argue that they're just pretty. It's funny to me when you look at all those images, and all the pagan elements slowly being weeded out. It's also hilarious to me that people are like, oh, it's a red wizard, it's Santa Claus or Saint Nicholas. You know.
Look at Santa going off of the boat here.
See,
you look like a freaking wizard.
You can make it a wizard.
Everything.
You can make it a wizard. My wife's right. You can go down that path.
But I don't think they were making him Santa.
Yeah, they were definitely making him a wizard, not Saint Nick.
Yeah.
And that's because we live in a shitty boomer town.
With so much imagery, it is disgusting.
Covens and witches dancing at the... Yeah, we can't go to any of the local events because there's always like some weird coven dancing.
What? Pray? Yeah. Predator goes to the prey on.
Yep. Yeah. The last like river festival or whatever had an entire section.
Summer.
Yeah, had an entire section devoted to witches dancing. Skydog, where are you when I need a good witch burning? Huh? Guess it's not time yet.
There's literally someone that looks like a witch doctor, and she's got the whole thing. Even on the day
Wear
off.
a parka, boom, you're a wizard. Ha ha! Witches get stitches. Exactly. All right. Anyway.
Burnt stitches.
Woo! My wife's very, very touchy about this subject because she wanted to go to that. Anyway, let's get back into this. So I want to share a little of the excitement about Christmas and why you should push back against all those guys who think you shouldn't celebrate Christmas or any fun holiday. It's all pagan. No, there were pagan elements that have been weeded out. This is the anti-pagan holiday now. All its symbols are against all the pagan symbols, like, you know, feminism's paganality. It's against that because it's all about family and having lots of kids and everyone being together and having a lot of big meals and all the rest, and not concentrating so much on work, for example, concentrating so much on career, especially the women. Like, who feels more? There's not a holiday that's more likely to pull a feminist out of their empty, dead womb mentality more than Christmas. Dead womb. Right? Christmas is the holiday that can do that because, especially women, I mean, they feel this thing of like, yeah, where's the kids? Right? It pounds it into them. There's a reason why so many people in the professional world and all this hate Christmas so much. Not just because a lot of them are evil and they hate what's good, but because they don't like that feeling of, oh no, I'm wasting my life. And women tend to lash out against things that make them feel that way. So the obvious answer is to force them to feel it more. But that's just me.
Another reason to get rid of HR.
Right.
They're just planning events for getting drunk and, you know.
Yeah, I mean, why a Christmas party at work? What the hell are you doing? It's time for family. And even those people, right? Who's a loser at who wins at Halloween time, right? This is how you know that Halloween's is become the devil's holiday, even if it had good elements, and Christmas is God's holiday now, right? In Halloween, who is the, like, what is the alpha doing, right? Who is the guy that you want to be in this situation, right? It's the guy drunk with a bunch of half-naked girls in nurse outfits around him, right? Or cat outfits, witch outfits, sexy witch outfits or something, right? That's the image, right? Party, boobs, liquor. Ignore the kids. You go do wild things. Blah blah blah. Right? And okay. And then throw on a bunch of arcane imagery and witchcraft and all the other stuff on top of it, and then the push for watching horror movies, and then having all that imagery and all that crap thrown on top, and you can see the influences involved. What are the alphas?
Fetish of wanting to be scared.
Sex.
It's a fetish. It's a weird fetish.
You're a fetish.
Easy there.
You're my fetish. Anyway, so in Christmas, what is the alpha? What is the man who has made it? What is he doing? He's surrounded by family, right? It's the guy who gets to be back home for Christmas, preferably bringing a girlfriend or a wife or a potential fiance home to mama, right? That's Christmas. It's all about that. The alpha is trying to, in fact, if the alpha is out getting drunk, we see him as a loser. Right? If he's doing the same things he did for Halloween, we all view him as a loser, and he feels like a loser. He feels that pressure that he should have brought a beautiful woman home to mama, right? Even if he doesn't marry, he feels like he should do that at least, right? It's a beautiful tool for building family and all the rest. And it's amazing to me that despite decades of trying to whittle that out, tear it down, the best they could do was corporatize it a little bit and make some shitty songs. Nah. Suck it. Even in this day and age of wokeism, they could not take down Christmas, and they could not change it enough that it wasn't Christmas anymore.
To even say happy holidays.
Yeah. Right? Nowadays, it's back to Merry Christmas, and no one likes that anymore. Right? They couldn't stop it. And that's the power of God at work. I can't wait. There's a chance that I'll be able to, not this Christmas, but future Christmases.
You'll be able to take me home to your grandma?
I want to be able to do that. Like that image is awesome, right? Who's the king at Christmas time? The guy who's bringing a very attractive woman home to grandma, home to mom, right? That's the king. That's the guy on the pedestal in that holiday. The guy who's bringing home a potential wife to the family that everybody loves.
I remember the first time it was their last family get together.
Yeah.
You called me. You introduced me to every relative over the phone.
That was
fun.
Your
grandma was dead silent.
It was
talkative lady.
To be fair, they were also a little shocked. I think some of them were worried I was not interested in dating and women in general because they'd never seen me date because I'd always been halfway across the world and was busy writing books and stuff.
You're like 3/4 of the way.
Oh, excuse me, 7,000 miles instead of 15. So when it suddenly my first girlfriend they've ever seen me have is of this hot chick over here, right? And we were already getting close to being fiancés at that point. Their brains kind of broke.
Haven't made it back to the States yet.
Yep. Well, let's face it. You were already coming to Missouri with me.
I was moving 10,000 miles for you.
Yeah, if a woman moves 10,000 miles to be with you, you better marry her. Like you've. I'm
kind of kicking myself. Like, why didn't we?
Yeah, you were pretty much already committed, but anyway, we need to actually get to the lesson. Let's just say too many people convinced us that we shouldn't get married yet, but they only were able to delay us about 4 or 5 months.
3 months.
3 months, I guess. Well, altogether 4 or 5. Yeah.
I planned the whole wedding in 3 months.
That's true, but the point is we didn't get to the point of even planning the wedding for a few months. All right. It's okay. Back here. Until then, Christmas was a mockery of our Savior's name. But when God worked his will, the holiday was subverted into a beautiful celebration of the birth of our Savior, and thus the crushing of our spiritual enemies. The concentration on family lie in I think that's the wrong lie. That is the wrong lie, Aaron. Lie in firmly with the original commandment, be fruitful and multiply. Genesis 1:28. So I want to be clear, this should be a joyful time that you enjoy to the fullest, thumbing your nose at the devil and all the principalities of darkness the whole time. There is a reason why they hate Christmas so much and have been attempting to destroy its modern implementation since its conception. You may wonder about the title of our lesson. on Christmas. On Christmas. Christmas? Why did I write Christmas there? I don't know. Bloody sacrifice and victory. I promise in future lesson plans to concentrate on less morbid sides of this holiday. But, ooh, coffee. Thank you. Thank you, wife.
You're welcome.
But our theme, this curriculum, demands a closer look at the part of the Christmas story often glossed over. The title of which in most Bibles is direct without flourish. Herod kills the children. Now when they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, Rise, take the child and his mother, flee to Egypt, or remain there until I tell you, for Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him. And he rose and took the child and his mother by night and departed to Egypt, and remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet, Out of Egypt I called my son. Herod kills the children. Then Herod, when he saw that he had been tricked by the wise men, became furious, and he sent and killed all the male children in Bethlehem and in all that region who were 2 years older or under, according to the time that he had ascertained from the wise men. Then was fulfilled what was spoken by the prophet Jeremiah. A voice was heard in Ramah, weeping and loud lamentation, Rachel weeping for her children. She refused to be comforted because they are no more. Matthew 2:13-18. This verse haunted me as a child, and I suspect most readers are too caught up with figuring out where the wise men came from or the various prophecies and singing angels to take the time to soak in the revelations from this verse. An entire village and region's toddlered boys slaughtered just like that. A whole generation dead in an attempt to kill Jesus before he was old enough to begin his ministry. A tactic we can see mirrors Pharaoh and thus the principalities of darkness's tactics to destroy and suppress the Israelites in Egypt. We see it in the modern day with the mass destruction of children, with abortion in a modern day. Why did I repeat modern day twice? With abortion. And if you read less accepted works of origins and validity, I don't have time or the patience for the confusion it would cause, a tactic used in mass on humanity before the flood. Whether or not those last apocryphal works can be trusted, we can see the cultic satanic worshippers and such that run much of the world still use the same tactic to deprive God of his warriors and workers before they can grow to maturity, and in some cases even see the light of day. And this actually also goes back to the original commandment, be fruitful and multiply. Subvert God's will. What do? You convince man not to be fruitful and multiply and kill as many of them as you Yeah. And this is the harsh reality of this time. Thomas! I don't know if you guys can hear that thumping.
Oh, they can hear it. They can hear it. It's loud. It's loud on the
child.
It's really loud.
Wine and cheese. You're getting posh on me.
They get the chocolate chips then.
I like that too. All right. Can you imagine, dear reader? You've done nothing. You've done nothing but farm or fish, being a stalwart in your community. You hear of some strange sages coming to town, and then a few months to a year later, soldiers come to your door, drag out your son, and hack him to pieces in front of you.
What did you feed him?
Did he poop? What did you feed him? I was asleep on the couch when the food happened. Perhaps this is one of those verses you can only appreciate properly when you're a father of young children, but the implications freeze my soul. And here we come to the central theme I hope these lessons are highlighting. Life is not a test. God didn't design this nightmare to test you. He had a specific plan in mind, a use for you, and his enemies have sabotaged his attempts at every turn, even as he slowly pushed events to their utter destruction. I know some of you will find this as anathema. What? Excuse you? Oh. Well, there's a dog next to me now. Anathema, and are already growling at what you're reading. Still, let's look at the work. What tests were these little ones supposed to have passed? How to die screaming with no knowledge or understanding of what was happening? What tests were the parents supposed to pass? How to watch your children die to evil while you sit by powerlessly because acting would mean the death of your entire family, as well as the babe being slaughtered in front of you? If God planned that as a test, then he is a psychopath. God is not a psychopath, I hear you say, dear reader, and I agree. Thus, life is not a test. Life is a messy war where there are unavoidable casualties. God saved Jesus before this massacre, but he didn't prevent the massacre. The Calvinists would say God planned for the death of these children and they literally existed to be murdered. And the Calvinist is an imbecile. Yes, an imbecile. Like the Churchians, he is underdeveloped and childlike, both in his faith and understanding of the world. You are here for the actual meat of the word, not the milk, as I pointed out in the intro to these lessons. Verse, the verse where Paul says at some point you need to stop milk, blah, blah, blah. So we will look this reality in the face. We are not toddlers singing, he, God, has the whole world in his hands just before we are slaughtered by the designs of the enemy as the little ones in Bethlehem were. She wants the cheese. Distracting me in the serious moment, Skydog. How rude. I also laugh how she put this wine right in front of me like I'm the one drinking it. Making me look like a drunkard over here. Turd. Let's say I make a written exam for teens who have been given no study material or even false study material on a test about basic physics they could have known if they were paying attention to the world around them. Then when inevitably the vast majority of them fail, I then kill all of the failures for not passing the test, or even worse, not save them from a tiger in the next room because they didn't pass the test I would test. This would make me, I need to rephrase this sentence, but this would make me a psychopath. A monster in a horror movie coming up with a twisted morality to justify my disgusting behavior that we would be pining to see destroyed in a horrid manner on the screen. So, if God creates a test in the form of life that puts those being tested in such a place that they are cheese and chocolate, how exciting. Such a place that they are almost set up to fail or literally have no chance in passing as they die before they're old enough to even be tested, then he is a psychopath. This is not hard logic. And in fact, this is the logic that has been used against the church by the midwits and straight up morons of the atheist world for the last 50 years. If we see the world as a controlled test, then every evil that is perpetrated is squarely on God's head as the one presiding over the test. If a teacher giving finals doesn't do anything as an active shooter blows away his students, and he had the ability to stop him, we would blame him even more than the shooter. Rosie. Shooter. And rightly so, I might add. Right? And I'm going to steal some of this chocolate.
Get your snout away from me.
So, chocolate. Sorry, distracted by wife's chocolate. So,
you jealous?
I want to highlight this fact too. There's a reason also why I feel like I need to bring this up. Because unlike other things where I don't care as much, like maybe you feel differently about tongues and the Holy Spirit than I do, for example. Right. This actually has a lasting impact, and it flows through all of our different denominations. Catholic, Coptic, doesn't matter. Various Protestant denominations. We all have this test mentality in us, and it's really annoying. And it drives people away. en masse from the church. Because guess what? The only people who can think this way properly are those who haven't had true tragedy, like real tragedy, not just first world tragedy. We're talking like those kids in Bethlehem, watching them get slaughtered in the streets. Like there are no, the term, there are no atheists in foxholes. Well, there are no Calvinists in foxholes either. Because when you watch your friend get blown away, you can't accept the thought that he was just blown away because God made him to be destroyed, right? You can't accept that. You can't accept that your fighting is pointless. Maybe it is pointless in this case, so you're fighting the wrong fight, but the idea that you shouldn't fight or there's no place to fight because you can't make any difference anyway, right? This inevitably creates a stupid situation where the midwit and the atheist are annoyingly right. Because they're like, well, that would make God disgusting. That would make God a psychopath. That would make you a psychopath for following him, blah, blah, blah. And if you go for the churchian idea that this is just a test, that God's in control of everything and he's allowing all this evil stuff to happen, that he's even made evil knowing that evil would happen.
He has the whole world in his hands.
Right. And, they'll make arguments of, oh, it's about free will. But no offense. He already created enough free will. Right. Remember, the world wasn't perfect. We were sent there to bring the world into the kingdom of heaven. That was the original test, if it was a test. Or if it was a training ground, whatever it was. I could see an argument for a training ground for a future mission, if you know what I mean, this entire life. And you know what wasn't part of that equation? The devil coming in and tricking Eve and turning everybody against God. That wasn't part of the equation. That wasn't part of the test. That was one of God's own betraying him in the way that being knew how to betray God the worst, knew the best way to hurt his plans. It's clearly kind of laid out. I don't need to go back to lesson 1 on this, surely, or is it lesson 2? Might have been lesson 3. You guys remember it. Go back if you don't. And so Christianity at its base, when it's using the scripture the way it's supposed to, right, doesn't give the atheist any wiggle room, right? The atheist argument is life is evil, so God therefore cannot be good or doesn't exist. Usually it's actually God cannot be good. And then they're trying to say, oh, he doesn't exist. But what they're actually usually saying is God can't be good. Most, especially militant atheists, aren't so much atheists as much as they hate God. Or they hate what they think God is. But it's because they're midwits and generally not as intelligent as they think they are. They don't understand that they hate God. That's too much for them to accept. After all, if God exists in any way, then hating him is pointless, right?
I think about it.
Right.
Not to get personal with your sister.
Yeah, mine's my sister.
It's easier to hate God than your own.
Yeah, than my parents. My parents caused a lot of the problems in their life and have not accepted that guilt at all. And so it's easier to blame God than the person that raised them. And again, right, if this is a war where things happen, that sacrifices have to be happening, like it strikes me the way the angel talked. If we go up in the verse, right, this angel is in duress. Now, when they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, rise, take the child and his mother, flee to Egypt, and remain there until I tell you, for Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him. This angel is in duress. Why did God need to have Jesus run at all? If this isn't more complicated than a test, why not just have him there and kill anyone who comes after him?
Like, that does not sound like a test. You know what I mean?
That sounds like...
That's like, sound the alarm.
Like, we need to hide you for a while before time is right. And, in my mind, when we look at this as well, Herod thinks he's successful. The devil and his minions think they get Jesus before he's old enough to be a problem. And in their minds, that's not, oh, we defeated the Messiah. That's in their minds, we've delayed the Messiah coming. We killed the baby before he could be born. And why do I say that? Why do I say God wanted them to think that? Because they stopped looking. They stopped killing. Right? Imagine if God had gone the other route and done something like what he did with Elijah. Right? Remember we brought up this story. Elijah is there, his servants there, all the Syrians come, and God strikes them all blind, right? Then the devil would have blown out all the stops, right? He would have brought all the powers under his control to besiege Bethlehem. Now, God might have been able to win the fight even with his friend, but he wouldn't have been able to pull off the cross. He wouldn't have been able to pull off the ultimate ritual to break the devil's power on earth. So he had to do a horrible choice of, I stick it out here and all the plans are ruined, or I hide my son and they do something horrible. You know, I don't envy God's position on that, you know. It's the kind of decision that I know leaders have had to make, but you just sit there and you think about God had to watch all that, you know. It's not like as we brought up before, the blood from the innocent when they're died literally speak to him. He hears it. The earth creation itself cries out to him, he says, when Cain kills Abel. The blood, the rock, the very creation itself screams about it. Now, some of this is also why this sticks with me a lot too, is because I grew up in Nicaragua, and that's I heard all the stories of the Civil War. There's multiple civil wars there. The drafting of kids as young as like 10. I remember watching a historical video about it, and they showed one of the kids hiding places to hide from the draft guys. It was this really ingenious made hole. And whenever someone would yell the draft hunters were coming, he would jump in this hole, and it would look like it was camouflaged. And the kid couldn't have been older than 10. Yeah, you can't think of this as a test if you actually face the world in an empathetic fashion. There's plenty of people who hear stories like that. I know some of them who can't connect to it, who can't actually put their minds in what's going on there. You just can't. And it drives me nuts. No. Let me eat my last chocolate. Thank you, wife. So, what makes this so important is the fact that if we don't face this head on, we're going to set ourselves up for another wave of atheism down the road. Once the fighting's done, once we've kicked everyone's ass, once we have our nations again, once there's no more incursions of the barbarian, once the devil's wasted himself and his principalities trying to physically kill us and has given up on that, the next stage is an attempt of subversion. When God's made us too powerful that he can't kill us, he tries to subvert. And so one of the easiest subversions then is, hey, look, your brother died like horribly like this. And why would God let that happen? Right? Why would all this horrible suffering happen? In a lot of ways, these midwits are more empathetic than the average soul. And I think that's part of what kind of sends them down this path. And better than God. Like, they're being prideful little pieces of shit. Don't get me wrong. But if you go from the churchian perspective, yeah, a lot of people churchian mentality. The I'm gonna go for all this pain just to go for some free will. Yeah, the churchian God is a psychopath. The Calvinist God is a freak.
They're the ones that don't bat an eye for when a woman decides to abort her kid while there's King Herod out there killing the kids.
Yeah,
that's a subversion right there.
Yeah. And if there isn't something about the physical realm that's more complicated about being interacted with, like, maybe it requires like we see in Revelations, or a setup or whatever it is to change things physically, and the devil can subvert those attempts, lay God's will, as we've seen multiple times that we've brought up, right? And then it's not always within God's ability in that moment to have his completed and prevent certain evils from happening. Otherwise, as it's easily to point out, let's say you could prevent something from happening and you let it happen, and there's no excuse. Like, what's the excuse? If you're able to stop someone from killing somebody else, it's happening, and you just don't, and you warn the person and they go anyway, and you could still stop it, but you just decide not to. Why? Because that person needs to learn a lesson? You're a psychopath. You're an asshole. You're a jerk. Like, that's not a good excuse. And that's not God's excuse. And God doesn't need an excuse. And that's why, again, that's why it's important. If you don't want another wave of atheism taking a generation down the road, probably just a few generations down the road, by the way. It depends on how remade everything is, but I expect, given technology, things will just speed up. Like, those similar cycles, but they'll be faster. Who knows? Maybe they'll be slower. Like, maybe all the technology will go away, or blah blah blah. The technology seems to just speed up the cycle, not get rid of the cycle. Just make them faster. And if you don't want that to happen within a few generations, we have to face this head on. We have to look at it and say, no, the Churchians were wrong about this too. And it's scary. Like, I realize a lot of it is fear-based, because if the whole world isn't necessarily in God's hands, like every little ant dying is under his control or something that's in his plan, right? If his plan can be subverted, then that means evil might win in your life, and it would be 100% your fault for not fighting back properly. You fighting back matters. You see, part of the reason why Churchians are the way they are is because they don't want responsibility. They don't want to be responsible. They don't want their fight to be needed, because they just want to have retirement in the clouds. They don't want, if it's all about me, it's all a test about me, then my efforts towards the fight don't matter. See how a Churchian boomer might enjoy that mentality?
Yeah, well, their songs more about them than about...
They enjoy that, because then all they have to do is be a good boy or girl, and then they get their perfect retirement in the clouds. This is what it is. If, on the other hand, it is a war that they are actively a part of, that they ignored, like everybody else, what does an army do to somebody, a private, who doesn't do their duty, right? Everybody else is fighting and dying, and they're just sort of sitting in the back, eating their rations, saying, but I'm not hurting anyone. I'm not helping either, but I'm a good person. Right? Does the army take well to that mentality? Or do they feel a little betrayed when someone doesn't pull their weight? And your God, your king, we're going to get to it later in the lesson, is at war. The very least, you better join him in that war. Otherwise, you're that private in the back that he's not going to take kindly to, not helping, not pulling weight, not doing what they were made to do. It's a funny thing. You have to do all this tiptoeing, because people will scream. Because in reality, I realize now, it's fear. It's why they react so harshly. They pretend it's like I brought up with libertarians, right? You suddenly realize at some point that they just want the drugs or the boobs or whatever. Well, in this case, the Calvinists and all that, they want control. They want the world to be ordered to the nth degree, even if that means that their God is a complete psychopathic freak, right? They want it all ordered and controlled. To give up that order and control is terrifying, even if it means God's not a psychopath anymore, right? So giving up that control, that box in your head that everything scary. Now, that's why there tends to be no Calvinists in foxholes, real foxholes, right? Because, well, unless they haven't really thought about the theology of it. Like most of them, like a soldier is never really a Calvinist, not in the end, because it would drain their will to fight. Because why are they fighting and dying? There wouldn't be a purpose to it. And you know, you can't motivate a soldier with the Calvinist mentality. I'm not saying there were never soldiers who would consider themselves Calvinists. I'm saying they never really took it to its full logical potential, because you can't, because then the fighting would be pointless for them. They'd be just robots going through the task. And wow, I'm an hour in. Oh, I'm sorry, Arcanes. And you can, hopefully it'll be a little clearer.
Let's see.
All right, but I'll try to wrap it up, that whole tangent. Atheists and their whole view is God is bad because he allows evil into the world. They're able to get there because churchian mentality that everything that happens in the world, God is allowed to happen or pushed to happen. If pushed to happen. And thus the atheist goes, if God allowed that to happen, he's a psychopathic asshole. Thus, the atheist is reacting to a logical stimuli of God is in control of everything, he should have stopped evil from happening. In reality, the Bible paints a picture of a messy war. No, it's good. You didn't derail, Arcanes. I want to make sure I'm translating what's in my head proper. But I also don't repeat too much. I'm also an hour in, so I'm like, oh shit. I gotta get going. But and it's good that I explain it to you guys too, because it is in a lot of ways the conclusion to the point of this entire Sunday school lesson. Is I want everyone to view life as a war, because if we don't, future generations will turn to atheism because they'll wonder why God doesn't stop evil. That makes sense? And as we've seen, you can't blame God for the snares of the devil. Yes, you can't. But that means you have to recognize that God either can't or won't stop all the snares for whatever reason.
Like think about in Daniel, was it? Or Ezekiel?
Yes, where God's plans are delayed.
Where Michael was delayed to talk to Daniel, right?
Yeah,
because he was fighting the Prince of Persia.
Yeah.
That kind of
we talked about
things
that.
like that kind of do happen.
Right. This in the Bible, there are several moments where God's plans are delayed, are pushed back.
Why are they delayed?
Right.
I don't know.
Because of the devil's interference in his principalities. Okay. What's scary about that, why it's fear, is because then you have to accept the fact that you're responsible for your own protection. You're responsible for your prayers to God, for praying over those you love. You're responsible for joining in the fight.
That's why you gotta pray like your life
depends on it, because it does. See why it's scary to get out of this box, this Calvinistic box of, or this semi-churchian Calvinist box of God's controlling everything. Everything's a test. I'll never receive more than I can handle, while ignoring passages in the Bible where children are slaughtered. Like, well, I don't know how to tell you this, but that kid being hacked to death by a sword was given more than he could handle, mentally, physically, and spiritually. You gotta, right?
Born yet.
Right. Well, in this case, he was only 2 years old. It's horrible, right? You have to figure that out. You can't just either God was okay with that, or couldn't stop it, or wouldn't stop it for some reason. And there's no other wiggle room. There's no other wiggle room. And so you have the churchians who want God to be so omniscient that he can snap and everything changes. Everything stops. God doesn't need any input from us whatsoever. He made us for companionship or something weird. I mean, I remember the excuse when I was young was, oh, he made us so that he could share creation with us, but he wasn't lonely. Oh, no. He wasn't lonely. He had the Godhead. That means he wouldn't be perfect. Right. It just doesn't hold weight or water. And that's why the atheists were able to, for that time period, completely dominate Churchians because Churchians' mentality is stupid. Their theology doesn't make any damn sense. It ignores entire passages of the Bible and whitewashes and just the slaughter, the death.
What is going on?
Uh-oh. I think I got a little too vocal and spit
flew out of my mouth. On my computer?
No. Yes. It is reality. You. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry for getting so caught up on that. It's just sometimes I run into this problem where people don't understand what I'm saying. And they freak out a little bit. They think I'm giving the devil too much credit. Or I'm belittling God. But you have to look at this for what the Bible says. For what the Bible actually shows. The amount of times that God's wills is delayed. Right? God is still so much higher than the devil. Don't get me wrong. But the devil obviously understands how this game is played way better than we do. And he's been able to delay God for thousands of years. Thousands of years. And God was willing to push it by, right? Bringing up Moses again. Remember that whole part that we talked about where God was going to wipe out the Israelites and restart with Moses? And only Moses convincing God not to change things? That would have delayed things thousands of years more. Now, God would have had his way. His will is not mocked, but it can be delayed and delayed and delayed. There's a whole faction of evil, mostly of like the Eastern types, the Taoists, the balance. We talked about it, whose entire thing is around Buddhism and all that, is trying to make this last forever, pushing off revelation so it never comes to be by keeping just enough good in the world that they're still in control, but there's not this. The stage isn't set for evil for the revelation situation. You know what? Let's get back to the thing. I spent too much time on this. So, if God creates a test in the form of, did I already do that? In the form of life that puts those being tested in such a place that they are almost set up to fail or literally have no chance in passing as they die before they're old enough to even be tested, then he is a psychopath. This is not hard logic, and in fact, it is the logic that has been used against the church by the midwits and straight-up morons of the atheist world for the last 50 years. If we see the world as a controlled test, then every evil that is perpetrated is squarely on God's head as the one presiding over the test. If a teacher giving the finals doesn't do anything as an active shooter blows away his students, and he had the ability to stop him, we would blame him even more than the shooter. Evil is expected to be evil, so it's not a surprise when they act thusly. But how can we justify the inaction of God in this instance, who punishes so thoroughly when we fail to keep justice in our own nations?
I just think of that phrase, it's like, why? Because of evil. Well, evil's unfair.
We expect evil to be evil, to do horrible things. He has told you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God? Destruction of the wicked, the voice of the Lord cries to the city, and it is sound wisdom to fear your name. Hear of the rod and of him who appointed it. Can I forget any longer the treasures of the wickedness in the house of the wicked, and the scant measure that it is accursed? Shall I quit the man with wicked scales and with a bag of deceitful weights? You rich men are full of violence. Your inhabitants speaks lies, and their tongue is deceitful in their mouth. Therefore I strike you with a grievous blow, making you desolate because of your sins. You shall eat, but not be satisfied, and there shall be hunger within you. You shall put away, but not preserve, and what you preserve I will give to the sword. You shall sow, but not reap. You shall tread the olives, but not anoint yourself with oil. You shall tread grapes, but not drink wine. Micah 6, 8-15. The answer is to see life not as a test, but as a war with unavoidable casualties. The fact of war is that no matter how good your commander or perfect your logistics, men are going to die. In war, it is always how many die, not if people die. And spiritual warfare is no different. Remember what we read in the Bible. The enemy always has a say in war. God made plans and the devil sabotaged them. God counterattacked and declared the eventual destruction of his enemies through his wayward servants who had been deceived into rebelling. But I can already hear those crying about the verses calling life a test. Let's examine the most obvious case of Paul again. And this is funny. This is why translation matters. And I should have read all my translation. Because I read this verse a bunch when I was a kid in NIV. And in NIV, it's different. But in ESV that I used here, it says, "For I'm already being poured out as a drink offering, and the time of my departure has come. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith," it says in ESV. In NIV, it says, "I have passed the test. Henceforth, there is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have loved his appearing." 2 Timothy 4:6-8. I have passed the test. See, I even said it there. Translations. Man, I have passed the test, Paul says, in reference to him performing a service to the Father and dying well, knowing he was a faithful servant in life. Funny how everyone glosses over the first part of the verse. I have ran the race. Is life a race? Am I supposed to compete with others on how fast I get to heaven? No. Then this verse is a metaphor, not literal. He is referring to a part of life, not life itself, let alone how they ignore the first sentence. I have fought the good fight. Of course, there are tests in life, just like a soldier will be tested in war. But the point of the war is to win the war, not test the soldier. You might be tested by God to see if you are ready for more responsibilities, like a soldier taking a driver's test for a tank. Was the war there to see if the individual soldier had learned enough to drive the tank? Or is the test there to prepare the soldier to go to war with the tank? Tests aren't made for testing's sake, unless, of course, you are the modern education system. And thus, in our testing, we should ask what we are being tested for.
I've seen those education systems and I don't like it.
God's war with his rebellious watcher sons and their devil god. And that's important, right? Even if we were to accept that life is a test, you'd have to explain what the test was for. And as far as I could tell, you would test someone on overcoming extreme evil and fighting them so thoroughly if you expected them to go fight evil somewhere else in a similar fashion. I don't test someone on how to fly an airplane if I expect them to drive a submarine.
It's like those people who join the Navy, but they end up flying a plane on the Navy ship.
There you go.
But they didn't learn to swim instead.
Yes. Okay. Let me see if I lost anybody. Okay. Keep going. Where was I? Most of the Bible points to an epic generational showdown with evil with casualties on both sides. I don't say this to terrify you, as Paul said. Dang, it's that stupid verse, not putting the verse down, sorry. No spirit of fear, so do not fear the enemy, but understand his hatred of you and your children. This war, as we've explored, is both one of physical territory and spiritual territory. A war between God and the devil and all their children. If our God is at war, how can we say we serve him and not be at war by his side? What kind of faithless servants would we be to not join the struggle, even if we lack strength for the task? When a king goes to war, so does his kingdom. So start acting like you are in the kingdom of heaven. I have a last argument for this view. It's not about you, as Vox Dei so aptly termed. If life is a test, in your mind, then you have made life about you. Dear reader, you may be tempted to say it's your life and thus it should be about you, but that's the trap of the devil. The temptation to declare yourself God over your own life rather than giving over yourself to the King of Kings and God of Gods. Life was given to you and is not about you. So a test, though precedent in your own life, is about more than just you. And I forgot that I did that whole military theme before, but we'll repeat it. Like the Bible often repeats different arguments and words it differently. Why does a military test a soldier and equipment or give extensive training?
And
then I just keep repeating myself over and over again. Is it just for the personal benefit of that soldier? So they have skills to use in their life, better job opportunities perhaps, or more confidence? No, these things are welcome side effects of the true purpose of training, to make the soldier more useful for the army and the nation that employs that force. The personal benefit of the individual soldier is welcome, but not the central point. Winning the war is the point. That is why you are tested to see if you're ready to take part in the fight, to see how faithful of a servant you will be and useful you will be to the Father. You ever wondered about the term flak over the target, right? Vox has used that before. When do you get more attack from the devil? When you're doing God's will. You're under attack more. And honestly, I really see that in my parents' life, by the way. And
it's crazy. It's like even now.
Yeah.
What we're praying for right now. We've been getting so much spiritual. Like I really think the fight on Friday night or Saturday, whatever it was because of that.
I agree. And by the way,
keep praying for that. You know?
Please pray for our protection too. Because not just that, like, I kid you not, this is the second or third time. I didn't get to this when I was explaining, but I was probably, it's an hour, like maybe 10 minutes, 30 minutes before we streamed, I had to collapse on the couch with a fever that came on me out of nowhere.
Oh, this is not the first time it's happened either.
Just before we streamed. And you had
it very easy. Light day at work.
The day was light at work. I should have been fine. I was
tired from everything that happened this morning in the kitchen in the boys' room, that mess that they made.
That was hilarious.
You think you'll be more exhausted.
But I wasn't. No. When I came home, I was pretty much fine. Until it was about time to stream. And then it was like something slapped me. And I had to lay down. And after praying for a bit and resting, I was able to get up.
Computer stuff. It was getting me agitated. Like I was having this anger that I'm just like, I'm gonna lose it. I'm gonna lose it. I'm not gonna just lose it normally. It's another level.
Yeah. And I say that for your guys' lives too. When you start following, like they'll do stuff like knock you out, get you sick at the wrong moment if you're not prayed up. And even sometimes when you are, stuff will still happen. So be cognizant of it. Pray. Please pray for me. I'll pray for you guys. The closer you get to the fight, the more you feel the flak. It's just how it is.
You can walk, if you are at the point where you could walk in a building, you all of a sudden feel this shadow or just like clouds, direct clouds just over the place.
Depends on the situation.
Depending on the situation, you know something's going on.
My wife also is more sensitive about that stuff than most people. We'll get back to the lesson. Because I know we're over now. I know. Hour and 20 minutes in.
Like you said, it's not about you.
It's not about me. This test can come at any point in your life. And in a way, the tests never stop. Ride never ends, baby. You could be as young as David at 12, killing lions and bears, or as old as Moses being 80 years old when he was called to confront Pharaoh. That blew my mind, by the way, when I realized that Moses was 80 before he'd even started the plagues and all that. That means some freaking 15-foot tall giant was killed by a 90-year-old man. God was mocking that giant hardcore. He was
back then people lived way longer too.
Well, but at that point, actually, they were living less. Yeah. A little bit more.
Okay.
Yeah,
but less than by a couple of hundred years.
Well, it was more than that too. Like, I mean, we're going from Adam.
Now barely people live to go past the 30-digit mark.
Down, girl. It's not that bad yet. Whew. Woman, I'm over 30.
3 digits. That's 2 digits.
Oh yeah, I went with like 3, Sarah.
No. Like 3 decimal spots.
Math. Anyway, be entertained with me that a giant taller than Goliath was killed by a 90-year-old man. God can really use whoever he wants when the time comes.
That's like when somebody hits 50, finally getting to that point in life. But I suppose it's right there.
Way past
before he goes down.
You can fail the test, but if you pursue God, he will test again. I know I failed some tests, and God came back with the same test in a different way. I know others reading this will take issue with the concept that we are needed in spiritual warfare at all. I would argue that you only make a tool you intend to use, and God made us with a purpose in mind as tools to be used. Whether or not he needed us for the task or chose to use us for it, or we simply made the task easier in some way, like a man building a lawnmower instead of ripping up grass by hand, is besides the point. The Bible, as seen in our lesson, shows that God uses vessels in his war. And when they fail him and lack faith, or even worse, choose to follow his enemies, his plans are delayed. Not thwarted, delayed. Just how God would have remade Israel from Moses' descendants if the Almighty had chosen to destroy Israel for their worship of the golden calf. We just brought that up. Mm-hmm. And I hope that's not too confusing.
Why couldn't they call it like a skirmish?
A skirmish?
Instead of a test. A little skirmish.
Skirmish. Well, because it is a test sometimes too, right? We could argue the test, though it was also a skirmish, that Israel failed there was that they would stay faithful to God, right, in the face of the temptations of the devil and all his minions. And they failed it so miserably that they angered him so much he was going to destroy them and start with Moses, make Moses the new Abraham.
Even Satan double. Even Satan tested Jesus too in the wilderness. That's a different terminology there. You know what I mean?
Well, and if we view something interesting about that is the devil doesn't understand what's going on either. He knows it. I'm sorry, we'll get into that probably next semester. But when the whole temptations of Christ happen, the devil doesn't know what he's dealing with. He knows that Jesus is the Messiah, but he doesn't exactly understand what the plan is. He doesn't exactly understand what Jesus is capable of and what he's going to do or what God's plans are. So part of the temptations, if you think about it, kind of like, have you ever seen a movie where two generals parlay, right, just before a battle, and they're trying to feel each other out and figure out who the other general is and what they're doing? That's what's going on with that temptations. The devil's trying to figure out what he's dealing with. And I suspect he knew what Jesus was and fought him in the past, but he was trying to figure out, why is he here now? Why is he appearing like this? Can I turn him to my side? Right? Is he becoming one of us? Because remember also, they must have been confused as why Jesus Christ was in the form that he was, right? If they knew what he was, they probably knew of him as a spiritual entity that they'd fought. And remember, in their minds, they'd created their physical abomination children, the giants and all that. He was trying to figure out what Jesus Christ was doing and what he was about. He was feeling out his new enemy on earth. Why do you think they didn't just instantly try to kill him?
Right.
They didn't know what was happening, and they were trying to figure out what their next move should be. And as they interacted with Jesus more, they more and more got to the point where they're like, okay, we got to just kill this guy now.
Pointing to the crucifixion.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Right?
And then
you see that escalation.
Where
they're this escalation where the demons knew what he was, but they didn't know what he was doing either. What did the demons do with the pig?
They knew they were scared of him.
Yeah, they were freaking out. Like, are you here to bring about our judgment now? Right? That was always their freak out.
Okay.
The demons knew what he was. They didn't know what he was doing. They didn't understand what exactly was happening. They were terrified that the big revelation war was happening now. That makes sense.
Okay.
Right? I'm sorry. So
that actually helps with
what
you were trying to say earlier a little bit too.
Well, you got to remember, this is a war. The devil doesn't understand every move that God's making. Right? And likewise, I don't know if that's... I'm trying to figure out exactly, because sometimes I'm creating these ideas as I'm coming to, and God's helping me in my faith as I grow with you guys. And I want to make sure I word things right as well. But it seems to me, as we look in the Bible, that there are times that the devil was able to surprise God. Demons, were you here to torture us? Exactly. Like, what's happening? Exactly. And the devil was in a similar state. He was trying to figure out, okay, he's here. We didn't kill him. What's he doing? Why is he just in the desert? Jesus. Thank you, Anthony. Right. And you can see the devil in a similar position where he's trying to figure out, why did the Messiah come, but there's no war? Why is he just sitting here in the desert?
And why is he like 30 years?
Like, what is he doing? Like, why did he wait so long? Where's his armies? What's going on? Can we just kill him? But that seems like
How old was he?
He was 30, I think.
30 when he was.
When he went through the temptations, yes. Pretty sure he was 30. Because he went through 3 years of ministry. And that was in the very beginning of his ministry. Right? When Transfiguration and all that, he was first getting. I got to go over everything.
It's just kind of interesting, like when he was a young boy, how Mary and Joseph found him in the temple at like 10 or something. I can't remember.
But you'll notice that the devil at that point, like, this is like me,
even crazy.
Like, this is a little hypothetical on my point, but looking at it, it looks like evil thought that they got Jesus in Bethlehem when they killed all the toddlers.
And then they thought again after.
They thought, They thought they got him. They all calmed down. And then 30 years later, he appears.
The surprise of the judgment. Oh, okay.
Yeah. And notice also how important it was that Jesus didn't go early, right? What was that whole thing when Mary pushed him to do a miracle and he tells her, "Woman, what are you doing? It's not my time yet."
Interesting.
Why was it so important that he didn't act yet? Right?
The whole timing.
God's setting everything up into motion. And if Jesus had acted too soon, it would be like, woman! Yes. It would be like that general who jumps too early. Like, imagine somebody during D-Day tried to invade a day early. That would have screwed everything up. Right?
I think you brought this up in your past lessons too about, don't be a useless, whatever you call it.
Useless servant?
Useless casualty. Don't be a casualty, mentality.
That's true. Don't.
And then this is
because God will win the war, but there will be casualties. Don't be stupid. Right? That was what my wife was bringing up. With that was.
I'm just trying to bring up past things that you said and try and make it see. It seems fitting in what. That's because
this is the
main
conclusion in a way.
Yes.
Like, I was leading up to this. We established already that if you're stupid, you'll be a casualty in the war. You could be like these Bethlehem children and just die, which is why abortion is so evil, right? It's not. It's funny.
This is why I take things that could be quote unquote medically whatever sound, but then I wonder if I think my mom was passing,
Yep.
I really think she was a casualty.
Witchcraft, all that. But
because
yeah. And that's scary too.
That was hard to accept.
We go back to the fear response that people have, thinking that they have nothing to
I don't want to hurt their feelings, blah 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 blah. Let them in, and then they stab you on the back. They're not going to change. Why? Because they don't play fair. That was
a confusing thing. I would be confused if I were them when you brought that up. Okay. But we'll go back.
My brain skips the premise steps. It goes straight to
It's funny. I'm sorry also, guys, if I'm repeating myself a lot, and I'm trying to be clear. I have dealt with even people I've liked just kind of respond negatively to this and don't think about what's being said. Like, people automatically do think the way we're talking, but they don't articulate it in theology. Like, they want it both ways. So
they want to keep it in the head, but they don't want to dare say it.
Oh, no, it's more, do you train with a gun? Right.
Yeah.
Right. We train with guns. A lot of people train with guns. The whole thing is about self-defense. Why do you do that if you're a Christian man? God can certainly stop any idiot who comes through the door with a knife or a gun. So why do you train with a gun? Why do we let God train our hands to war? What's the point?
Why were you told to, sell a cloak and buy a sword?
Yeah. Why? Wait, could it be that life is messy? And it's a war, and this place has gone in rebellion to God's will, and thus have delayed God's will in many ways. and subverted it in any way they can. Meaning, and I've actually dealt with this with somebody who couldn't grasp what I was saying, couldn't understand the point. The point is, either life is messy and we are responsible for our own protection and asking God for protection and praying over everything and praying hard and being physically capable so that God can use us in whatever fashion he needs without having to use up too much power to get it done, if that makes any sense. Or it's all in his hands and we're just along for the ride, right? One's a lot easier to accept than the other. But
it sounds more like what the world will want you to think.
Mm-hmm,
and
right?
Tends to make you,
what
take it easy.
Churchians want, what boomers want, so they can just be along for the ride. Yeah. Think about what the boomer wants. The boomer wants to just cruise through life.
But not have responsibility
for their stupid actions. But they still want to call people stupid. Like, think about this too. Have you ever had a situation where you're around someone who has that?
They call you lazy, and they're like laziest people because they're eating like a gazillion pounds of whatever shrimp or something.
Wife, that's gluttony, not sloth. You're having
it could cause slothness. You know what I mean? Like boomers are so
anyway.
Oh, creepy sloths with the slimy, pervy hands.
Yeah. Oh. Anthony, I can make you some mean shrimp whenever we meet up. Just saying. I got sways. But
you got ways.
I got sways. Anyway, where was I going with all this?
Sorry.
Way distracted.
About not taking responsibility.
I feel like I'm repeating myself too much.
You need to go move further on.
I feel like I should have finished that tangent before I started thinking about shrimp.
Pervy boomers.
Pervy boomers. The point.
The boomers want two things, right? That we were getting to, and about not taking responsibility.
Yes.
And then I took it a whole new level.
Well, and then there's the whole fear response of life being messy. You could be a casualty.
And boomers think they kill it forever.
Okay. Well, and I was going to say, a lot of these people often try to have things both ways, right? Let's say someone, one of the boomers, Churchians, here's about somebody who gets raped in Chicago, and then says something along the lines, "Well, that's what happens in Chicago. It was probably stupid of them to be there." Would you be surprised then if the same person would go into? Gosh dang it! This is rough sometimes when I don't write things out before I come in here.
And then went to your town.
If you guys ever had that moment, right, where you've ranted in your head and maybe even by yourself somewhere, and now the time comes to share the thought, and it's just not coming out as well as it did before. That's what just happened there, and I'm mad.
Sometimes it's good to say what you're thinking.
Okay.
Right.
So, I will just use the actual example. So we have an example, a friend, right? Not so much of a friend anymore. But when warned that she shouldn't go in LA at night to her car to walk by herself, being an attractive young Asian lady, she responded with, "Oh, God will protect me." Now, that's if something had happened.
I know who you're talking to.
Right. If something had happened to her, she was lucky enough that it didn't happen, right?
I know. It was late at night in Pasadena.
When it wasn't. Had happened to her, would the entire church have responded with, "Oh, God didn't protect her. God didn't do his job"? No, they would have said she was stupid and she was tempting fate and she shouldn't have done that.
Should have.
They would have instantly blamed her.
I should have just told my uncle.
And rightly, I might add, blamed her.
True.
However, there's a bit of an issue. If it's the whole world is in God's hand and they taught her to think this way, remember the Churchians had taught her to think, "Oh, risk, don't worry about risk. Just go do something stupid. God will protect you," right?
Go live your life.
Right.
Have fun.
Right?
Sorry.
They taught her to think this way. Rather than blaming God, which is what would be necessary according to if they were keeping their theology straight, right? They will instead blame her for being stupid.
Yeah.
Even though they made her stupid and made her think that she doesn't have to think in this in a tactical manner of that's a bad idea, that's a stupid mistake.
Also, here's the other thing too. I could have told my uncle, "Hey, let's follow her anyway from a distance and see what happens."
And understand also with that, right?
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's not too.
You've interrupted my train of
I'm
thought.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. With that, and so it really bothers me that churchians will be this way. A lot of normal Christians will be this way. They'll basically have their feet in both sides, right? I'm not saying God can't protect you in dangerous situations, but it does say don't test the Lord. And people do have this strange thing of when they'll say, "Oh, God will protect us. We'll pray for protection or whatever." And when something bad happens, generally they'll blame the person for being stupid, doing something stupid, right? And it's again, you look at it and you go, maybe they are doing something stupid. Maybe, for example, my son might go do something stupid on some monkey bars or whatever. But if I sit by and I don't stop him and he hurts himself, who gets blamed? Do you blame the kid who doesn't know any better? Or do you blame the adult who's watching the kid? You blame the adult. The kid might have been doing something stupid, but he doesn't know better, does he? Right? So if God is watching and is in complete control and it's all according to his will, then whose fault is it when something evil happens? This is why the mentality doesn't work. This is why you have to look at it as a war. And that's why it's scary, because it means your stupid actions actually matter. Your call to fight actually matters. And you need to act like it matters. Whew. I need to continue.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I still don't know if I'm getting my point across. I know others reading this will take issue with the concept that we are... No, wait.
We already read that.
So, be ready when your Savior calls you to war, because we all are called to arms, whether pure spiritual war or physical war, eventually. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Avenge the people of Israel on the Midianites. Afterwards, you shall be gathered to your people." So Moses spoke to the people, saying, "Arm men from among you for the war, that they may go against Midian to execute the Lord's vengeance on Midian. You shall send 1,000 from each of the tribes of Israel to the war." So there were provided out of the thousands of Israel 1,000 from each tribe, 12,000 armed for war. Numbers 31, 1-5. I want to highlight this. We've highlighted this before. The exact wording. Execute the Lord's vengeance on Midian. What's happening here is God is demanding his people enact vengeance on a group of people. God will call you, could very well call you to do something like that. He's done it before. Why wouldn't he do it again? So the Bible is a complex thing, and we'll get more and more into it. I feel like I've been all over the place. But the central tenet, I guess, if I may let Anthony... let Skydog here translate for me. You can't blame God for the snares of the devil, but you could also very well be called to fight against him, and you should be ready for that. And you should be joining in the fight. You can't be passive in this life. You can't just let things happen around you. I'm not saying those people can't get into heaven, but they're only getting in by the skin of their teeth. Because, like in war, nobody likes the guy who hung out in the back and tried to screw everyone's wives. You know, who do we hate more? You almost hate that guy more than the enemy, right? You expect the enemy to fight back, to kill people and do all the rest. You might even have a respect for him. You don't like the guy who took it easy, stayed home, and tried to screw everybody's wives while they were out, right? You don't like the servant who tried to do everything to look like he was helping, but didn't help. I just had this image of like a Three Stooges routine where like they're all moving stuff, but there's like one just kind of like pretending to help every now and then. What happens at the end of the Three Stooges routine? Well, that's right. They catch him. They all get mad and they start smacking the crap out. That's you if you don't fight the Lord's fight if you don't follow God's will into the fight. Whatever that turns into. And I feel like I repeated myself too much. And I really need to correct some of those spelling errors. But let's get into the questions. And if you got, if you guys ever have any questions, you let me know. I'll read them in the comments, even if I'm a little late. Question 1. How do you view life? A test, a war, or something different on the cosmic scale? Why? Well, if you guys haven't guessed, I don't view life as a test.
No, you got
No, I don't. I might have just talked for like 2 hours about it. But I will say a little bit of why I came down this road. And I don't know if it's just because of who I am, I think this way or what. But for me, for example, it was strongly related to prayer. I never understood the point of prayer. Because if God knows what I'm going to pray for, and he's not changed, his will is what it is, which again, as we've brought up, there are little stories where God's will is changed. His mind is changed by his servants asking him, right? Then what's the point of prayer? What's the point of praying over and over again? Why are you, if God knows what I'm going to say, he knows my heart, he knows what's going to happen, and he doesn't need me to pray for whatever reason, why do I have to pray? What's the point? And the answer is there is no point. Unless there's something more going on there, then there is no point of prayer. And you may disagree with me, it's fine. It's just a logical thing. If God already knows what's going to happen, he already knows what he's going to do, and then what is he making you pray for? What is he making you repeat yourself over and over and over for? Now, again, you're going to have the churchian's answer to that is always, oh, it's about you and your faith. So wait, it's about me? Like life is about me and my personal growth? That's why God's putting all this pain and suffering on the world so I can personally grow, little old me? That is the ultimate boomer move. To see all the suffering in the world, barely look at it, and then go, oh, this is all about me. God is just building my faith. Like, no, bitch. That's not what's happening. You are not the center of the universe. You are not the center of this story. And it's funny that I'm even using language that they would have used. Like, oh, it's not about you. They would literally said things, churchians around me, where they say, you're not the center point of the story. But then they act like they are the center of the story.
It's the,
every churchian has main character syndrome. I've ever run into.
Well,
and sorry, what was that?
Yeah. Well, I just remember one day the students had a prayer request, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she gave an update saying that she had an angel in her kitchen saying, I need help.
Yeah.
You know, the person you're praying is going to die and all that. So, yeah. Well, that is why we pray. Yes.
And repeatedly.
That's like a...
So, for me, I'm answering this question as honestly as I can. There came to a point where I just wasn't praying much because, I even viewed it as, well, if I truly have faith that God's going to do something, then wouldn't it be more faithful to just pray once and then expect him to do it? And that would be more faithful, right? If you're asking, for example, notice how many times I asked for coffee from my wife? Because I knew if I didn't, she would forget and I wouldn't get coffee for the stream. That's actually a show of a lack of faith. So if you repeatedly ask God, is that a sign of faith or a sign that you don't trust him to actually do it?
And there's times I say, oh, I'll do it.
Right.
Later.
And she pesters me, and it's fair sometimes. I don't do the things she wants me to do, like take out the trash.
Well, actually, you do that without me telling you. It would be something else, like check the tires.
Well, it's because we're ridiculous, and I can't think of a single situation where
example.
I've checked the tires after you asked me, and I actually needed to do something to my tires.
Example.
Never once has that, But I understand your need to feel like the car is not going to explode. That's fair.
Yeah, I almost had the tires. Anyway. Bad example.
But I understand what you're saying. Right. That was the other part. But God slapped me around one day and made it clear that it needs to happen. That not only was it in the Bible, we've all heard the verse about like the parable about the woman and the corrupt judge, and the judge does what she wants because he just wants to stop pestering him, and then says, how much more so will God answer you, because he wants to answer your prayers. And that always stuck with me too, because I'm like, well, then why are you making us repeat ourselves if you want to answer the prayer so much? But if prayer is, and we're into the hypothesis zone a little bit here, but if prayer is a buildup of power, if you are conducting God's power, if you are a conduit, if you will, God's use of prayer for humanity. Like, why does God wake people up at 3 a.m?
Intercede.
Yeah, to pray and to intercede, to protect things, and offer them for things they don't even know what they're praying for, if there's no power behind it. Think about it. Like, what's the point of waking up someone in Idaho to pray for someone in Indonesia, which we know stuff like I've seen it happen in the mission field and whatnot. And especially sometimes they don't know who or what they're praying for. They just know they're supposed to pray. I've had that happen before.
My grandma's had that happen. Yeah. The thing about his car was about to overheat.
Yeah. But there's plenty of times where you never find out why you prayed. It was for someone you didn't even know about. Right? What would be the point of that? What growth do you get from that? Well, it's clear to me that prayer is, like, think about also, right, how prayer is worded in the Bible when we're referencing moving the mountain, right? If you have a kernel of faith and you pray over, right after that, if I remember correctly, you have that thing about praying over and over again, right? It's, if you would only pray, if you would only repeat and build up God's power on earth, mountains would move. If you take it as a translation of, this is what you should do if you want to see God's power around you, be a conduit for him to work in the physical realm, then you need to pray repeatedly.
Why can't?
And it's why it's important to learn to be connected to God, so he can guide you to what prayers to pray, where he wants those prayers. It's why it was important to pray for your nation and pray. My wife was called to pray over the elections one time, and we actually got
2020
kicked out of a small group for that. Not like, it was like more like a cold shoulder till she left, if that makes any sense.
I had 2 types of those prayers happen.
Yeah.
And I was praying through the Spirit, and
they didn't like it. And she was kicked out.
I've had to pray over my dad in front of my video.
Yeah.
He cut me halfway. Yeah. Why? Something didn't like it.
Mm-hmm. But small tangent, but that's okay.
Yeah, I know.
I like it. So that's a huge tangent. I get on your case for a small tangent, and we're like a tangent of a tangent of a tangent. Hey, wife, why don't you stay shut up?
Prayer warriors are a thing. Why are they a thing?
Hey, why is that necessary? What is the point of it? But what's fascinating, if you read in between the lines of some spiritual stuff, biblically orientated and stuff, it seems to be that what we are, it seems like we conduct God's power. We are, in a way, all arcs of the covenant now that God works through to interact with the world without physically coming and destroying the world, if that makes any sense. Yeah. It's a funny thing. If you remember what, I think it was Elijah, not Elisha. I always mix up who it is, right? He gets to see God comes by him, right? And his physical presence is so crazy that there's storms and wind and fire, but then he's gentle in a whisper as he comes by. But that whisper, if you think about it like this, just him whispering to him and passing by was so, like, shook the world so hard that storms and crap were happening all around him. So it kind of, I think there's the connection between the spiritual world and the physical world. I'm kind of getting into the weeds. I know I am. But it requires a physical being to help conduct it to happen. Now, that's not saying God can't do it. It's saying it's easier to work through humanity. And he can invade the physical world, like we'll see in Revelations, right? But that's going to be a big battle. That's going to be earth-shattering.
But it's also interesting. It's like after you have those prayers, those really intense prayers, why do you feel exhausted afterwards? Just like the same way, if someone's doing a ritual with witchcraft or paganism or whatever the crap it is, they feel exhausted in a different way.
Yeah, and we should clarify
you know
there.
What I mean? You see what I'm saying?
My wife's not saying.
I'm just,
not saying they're both witchcraft. It's saying both seem to use the power inside you.
One's for the enemy. One's for Jesus Christ.
And what's always saying you're a cup that's filled up to be emptied again. Right? You're not supposed to hang on to the power that God gives you. You're supposed to release it towards where He sends it.
Our bodies are, the temple and everything.
And it strikes me, if we look at the Bible and how prayer seems to work, it's like we're amplifiers and conduits. So God can get all of us together to start praying, and it amplifies His presence on earth, and He can literally shake mountains. Like, if you would only pray, He says, then I could shake these mountains. I could make these mountains move. But you don't pray, so I don't.
Well, it's like
I can't until it seems to be like a projection thing. I'm sorry for being all over the place, but remember, God put the breath of life in us. We have a little bit of Him in us. And that's why also the devil covets our worship, because he can use it to gain power and to project his will. It's another reason why they don't just kill off all humanity. That's what the twisted witchcraft that my wife brought up, the twisted version of prayer, all the sacrifices and all that, right? It's that building up of evil power.
I mean, you think about even when the disciples were trying to pray over somebody, for healing or whatever. They're like, why can't we do this?
Specifically,
that's a good example.
That was a good story.
I think goes along with.
Right. There was a time when the disciples tried to drive out a demon. They couldn't do it. And they brought him to Jesus. And he does it just like that. And they go, well, why couldn't we do it? And it was interesting. If you read it, there's actually like steps. So he said this particular demon requires fasting and prayer before you confront it.
Like, that's crazy to me. Like, whoa.
And that's important for me too. Because when I was younger, I never understood the point of fasting. And then I'm like, well, if it's just to focus, well, then you don't need it if you can focus properly. But if there's an actual spiritual element involved where denying your flesh somehow builds power in a spiritual realm, and in such a way it can have a certain, but like, the weird thing about it is the spiritual world is full of weird rules and stuff that we don't understand. We see glimpses of it in the Bible. We see glimpses of it in life around us. The fact that there seems to be a permission thing with spirits and evil coming into your house and your life. Weird. Right. Why is that?
I know.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a weird thing. Why do these things need to... Like, it's throughout culture. It's in the Bible. Like, why do these things need to be invited in? Why do they need permission? It's so weird.
Quite frankly, part of me is like, well, I kind of don't want to understand the whole thing because I won't be able to handle it.
True. At least in our current states.
In our current states, sometimes it takes time for us to go through things too.
Cool. Yeah, continue. Sorry. I realized I was technically answering a question.
Oh. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if I go back a couple years, what I think now and feel about the Bible and about Christianity, about I don't know how you call it Christianity at this point. You know what I mean? Churchianity. I had to go through things before I got to where I am now.
We have to accept it.
Yeah. To accept it. And I think about our parents and our, some other people. I'm like,
okay.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I guess what I'm trying to get at here is I have to view life as a war to pray properly. I don't know. I could get to heaven and God might slap me around and say, I don't need your help, boy, or, I don't need your conduit or whatever. You were just a weirdo. It was all about just improving you freak. Then I will stand corrected and I will ask God's forgiveness. And that's that. But in this life, I just do not pray properly unless I feel like there's a purpose behind it beyond my own self-improvement. And that's the truth. And if there is a purpose behind prayer that's more than self-improvement, then that automatically means that life is a war and not a test, because there's stuff outside of our control that we can fail at. We can fail to pray enough and someone might die because of that. That's hard too. You think about the responsibility of that. I know there's been times where my kids have been harmed because I didn't pray enough. It sounds horrible, but
every pregnancy and how things got more intense with the hospitals and everything. And then you compare it to, the very first time and how we were able to handle both circumstances.
Each kid, as we went, God worked on us to pray properly until our last birth was incredibly smooth, despite the fact that we had probably the worst staff helping us out.
Doctors were trying to delay things, lying. I think the main doctor.
Well, and just the nurses didn't want to do their jobs, and
the doctor that was trying to that 90-year-old lady who couldn't retire, doctor
was trying to get you to do very dangerous shit with the.
But the fact that my main doctor had to step in and get out of his professional work to try and send nurses on a rabbit hole to get the baby out, because I think the hospital was trying to delay Donna.
Well, the point is, we prayed much better, much more in advance over her, and I really felt the difference. We're talking like we had car accidents while she was pregnant that were very strange. We don't even get into, like, we're talking almost spiritually caused, if not for sure. It's more and more as I get older, we feel like they were spiritually caused. And you don't, because, I've been in more than one wreck. I've felt what a normal wreck is like. I felt what one caused by something else is now. And it went from literally things getting close to killing the kid the baby was to the point where it was running smooth as butter despite all this other crap
coming around us. Room had to clear.
And that changed because I went from that mentality I had before to God bringing me to the point where I was praying every single day for a smooth birth, for health for my wife, health for the baby, health, everything to work out. I prayed over the ground the baby would be born on. I prayed over the doctors. I prayed over all of it. And God led me to that. I can't go through that experience and justify telling people that life is a test. You may you may think the churchians definitely view it as a test, but even when they talk about it being a war, which with this lesson, all of them, actually, all of them, because all of them have this mentality that there's nothing that can happen on this world that God hasn't allowed to happen in one way or another. There are some, I'm sure, that have various versions of it. And I say all of them, I'm probably being a little harsh there. I've been in and out of a lot of them. I'm sorry this is taking so long, because this is more of a general the way churchians and a lot of different churches act. Yes, some of God acted this way, but Baptists often act this way. I need more time around Coptics and Catholics to say for sure, but I've seen enough of it in their work as well to make me question. But no, probably less. I'm all over the place with this lesson, and I apologize for it. But yes, why I have to view life as a war and not as a test, not as something that God's bringing about to grow us personally as human beings or whatever, it came from God bringing me out of the way I viewed prayer. And if I viewed prayer as an actual weapon and the defense and the only thing that sometimes stood between us and oblivion and all the evil and what they want to do to us, then I actually pray. Otherwise, it feels useless to me. Yeah. And of course, I also want to clarify, But there's like generational prayer behind this. It's funny to say, but there are people who say have dabbled in witchcraft and whatnot, who have to pray a lot more than you and I have to. And sometimes it's a family member thing. Like gets really weird and in the weeds. But for example, I've learned, and God led this to me, that it was really important to dedicate my sons and my daughter as soon as possible. Right? Declare them to be part of God's kingdom. No, I don't agree necessarily with infant baptism because there's no need to dunk a baby in water. It's not necessary, right? It's more the dedication to God, right? The water part's a symbol. It's the dedication to God, right? It's a declaration that this baby belongs to God and you don't have a right over it. Right? That's a declaration of faith to everything evil and spiritual around you.
And soft kind of thing.
Yeah, this is God's creation, right? And my wife coming from the orphanage and a lot, and just seeing the evil that's out there in the world, that is so important. And when you actually get into, because like the Grizzly podcast and whatnot, when you actually get into the creepy stories that come out, and the ones that I feel are real, they always go after the kids every single time. They're usually predicated with I could give you almost a bingo with some of these stories.
Some of those
divorced mom by herself with kids, move into a new town where they don't know anybody. And then there's something weird starts happening in their house, and it gets escalates. It gets weirder and weirder, and the kids are damaged for life from it. It always goes after the damn kids, and it's predicated. Sin comes into life. They lose protection because of the sin, and the male's not in the house to help out.
They go to the woman, and if they go through the woman, they go right after the kids.
Because
the man is not in the house, and society has built that the men are at work all days, all hours of the day. They come home, they're exhausted, and barely fight and do anything. You know what I mean?
To a degree, yeah.
To a degree.
I mean, a man always has to go out to the field of work, but I understand.
I know,
what you
but
mean.
it's like
I get it's interesting to think of it that way.
And why do they weaken the man to the point of exhaustion that you feel like you're basically, work till you're dead?
Well, hey, have you told that I've been in a lot of shitty jobs lately, and that's been affecting my wife?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
It's like all the attacks that we've had, even here, where we're exhausted. We're both exhausted. Where did they go?
Mm-hmm.
And
it's always after the kids every time.
You don't got family members and everything around to help you lessen the load. You really feel it.
Oh, man. I love you, baby. I'm glad I've gone over this with you guys too, because it helps me submit my. You do that. You get what you need. It helps me submit my thinking and let God help me understand what He's been trying to say through it. And so when I create a final product or whatever with all this, final something that I can put it like, okay, I finished it. It's as clear as I can physically make it. A lot of time it's really hard to explain a lot of stuff in my head, if that makes any sense. I don't know why I said it so weird, but that's what it is. Let's get to question 2. How might your prayer life change if you viewed it as a powerful weapon against evil? A pivotal tool that, if used properly, can thwart the devil's actions in your life? Well, like I said, I think I answered this question with that long answer of the previous question. It makes me pray a lot more. Yeah. Have you ever joined a prayer group that made all their prayers about themselves and not the Lord's will and war with his enemies? God. It actually never ceases to amaze me. The amount of time I've gone into these church and prayer groups, it's just...
It sounds like...
It's sometimes the Spirit of God is there and is taking advantage, but most of the time they're just kind of making noises and kind of kumbaya-ing together in the corner.
And make Jesus their sugar daddy.
Yeah, pretty much. I need to make a lesson that's don't make Jesus isn't your sugar daddy. God,
like
churchians
showing more respect.
Churchians need that like tattooed on their forehead so that when they look at each other, Jesus,
those
not
boomers
your
need it on
sugar
their
daddy.
car.
Not your sugar daddy. Not just something you go to when you're having trouble and you want things done, right? And and I'm sorry I did get a little passionate about this. It's one of those things that has been coming up a lot in the last couple of years in our life too. I've ran into people, even on SG, who I either didn't explain it properly enough or were so locked and had this instant fear response or that came out as anger when you suggest it. Because usually it comes out that, oh, how dare you suggest God isn't omnipotent, you heretic. Or how dare you, little man, think that your specific prayers matter. Blah, blah, blah. I had that one once when I was trying to express the concept that you should be praying ahead.
As soon as that test feels positive for any pregnancy, that's when you start praying.
Probably before that.
Even before then. What's your...
Yeah. There's no excuse why you shouldn't be praying for your future generations right now.
I'm already praying for our grandkids.
Yeah. And I've been... Let's keep this between... Yeah. I don't know. This isn't exactly... I don't know how to handle this one yet. But I've been starting to wonder if there might be something to the Catholic mentality of praying for souls in the purgatory. Not that I think there is a purgatory. It's more like, as I study things in the Grizzly Files and for the Grizzly Files, I find...
It's the Orthodox Jews, I believe.
Well, and I don't... Unlike them, I don't think there's a physical plane of purgatory. I think those in what we would call purgatory are stuck here. And...
Kind of like watchers?
Yeah, kind of. I'm formulating this thought, and I don't know, and I can't prove any of it. There are some apocryphal works that also support it, which, by the way, neither the Catholic Church or the Coptic Church. Oh, well, my man, I've been around a lot of peeps, and you might want to, because remember, their mentality is, you small man, you matter. Like, God is so much more than you. What does God need your prayer for? Kind of. It's like, I think so. He's saying, imagining the mentality that would object to those sorts of prayer. I remember specifically in this case, it was trying to explain why you should be praying in advance.
He's not talking about purgatory, is he?
No, he's not talking about purgatory.
Okay, sorry, my brain.
Remember, there are a few minutes or seconds behind us, right?
Oh, right. There's a delay. Okay.
Yeah.
My bad.
You'd be surprised, Arcanes. Like, I remember this specific case in my head. I don't know exactly how we started talking about it, but I made the suggestion that he should be as prepared for a spiritual attack as he was for a physical attack. Like, you practice with your guns, you practice shooting, you should also be praying as much as you're practicing. And you should be practicing with your guns a lot, right? And he took that to, I believe his exact words were something along the... He is a Catholic bro now. I don't know if he was... Yes. Anyway, we don't need to... I don't need to call the man out. Let's not be harsh.
I'm not. I'm just...
They could have heard that. Whispers are heard, woman. The actual... guys, whispers carry. If you actually want people not to hear anything, get in close and just talk. And then fucking shit this. Anyway. Let's just say I've learned how to actually talk in a way that people don't hear when I want to say, warn my boss about a cockroach in someone's food or something. No, that's not happening. But you get the point.
I didn't mean to stop you.
That was funny. Right. I'm sorry. This also happened a few years ago, so I'm trying to remember the exact wording and everything that happened. But his response was like along the lines of, "You prideful son of a bitch, how dare you think you have a part to play in this kind of thing? Like, God doesn't need your help, blah, blah, blah," is basically kind of how it goes down. And you think about it, a lot of Protestants are like that. Mm-hmm. They'll pray on one hand, they'll have like all night vigils. There's no mute button. Life would be so much easier if there was a mute button.
Yeah, they're called mutes.
As much as I'm happy I'm not deaf, I am envious of their ability to just shut everybody out and just go, what?
My grandpa would turn off his hearing aid if my mom walked in the room and was trying to talk to him. And she would just turn it off on her. Man. And she would get so mad. Then after she left, she would turn it back on. Because her pitch was way too high. It would mess with his hearing aids.
Yeah. Anyway, so this person responded with anger, but I suspect at its base was the fear of like, oh, I am responsible for my own protection under God. Like that doesn't of maintaining my connection to God and protecting my household on a spiritual level. And it's strange. You'd be surprised how much of that is even on Social Galactic. There's a lot of it.
Well, it's interesting too because Vox has brought up some ideas.
Yeah.
Around this, in some of his streams in the past, or even his writing. And
yep, 100%. He's brought it up before. His view that, like for example, there's this whole Protestant view where, like everything is planned out by God on like Calvinist level. Like there was something like along the lines of tornadoes or like Jesus Christ raking his hands across the ground or something like that. Like. No, come on. What? Stop it. Yeah, it was like literally some big time pastor in the Baptist church, if I remember correctly. Might have been Southern Baptist. I don't know which Baptist. Why there has to be Southern and Northern Baptist, I don't know.
Places where there's tornadoes.
Wake up if someone broke into my house, result of going to sleep listening to Mark Mar's autistic novel. Ooh. Someone's been watching too many Let's Plays. But I respect that you did that and then came here and listened to me ramble on for 2 hours and 11 minutes about theology and life and taking life seriously on the prayer front.
I mean, you and I talk about what's cosmology.
Yeah.
There's just people out there who would have a...
and in some ways, I feel like fiction is the better way to get to people like this, like Jesus Christ used parables for a reason. But God called me to make these lessons, and he made it very clear what he wanted them to be about, which was kind of scary making them because like I said, I'd run into these responses before, and so when you have it happen enough, you tend to kind of like not bring it up.
I remember when we started doing these lessons, one of the SGers typed, praise the Lord and all this because he's been praying that these lessons get out. Remember that?
I do respect that.
It's like,
and
people out there do know the need of.
And when you come from that angle, like
it's crazy. It's like,
and I don't want to put too much like.
Yeah.
Like you say that there's this part of me that goes, yeah, I'm not so prideful, but it's true.
But it's I
can't help it.
It's the duty that God has given us, and it's like.
And I need to, when I haven't been talking for 2 hours straight, you guys have lives too, actually go over the whole chain of events that led to these lessons, because though I brought up a lot of it, I brought up the whole thing at the church, the Presbyterian church. There's a whole lot more that God basically has frozen my life in place until I actually did this. It's pretty insane to look at now in retrospect. Like God basically was saying, I will not bless anything you do till you get this done. And it's.
I remember when we were in Missouri, it's like, why couldn't, the fan broke all that time.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not gonna bless you. I'm not gonna bless it.
Not gonna bless you with work. No, you get this done. And that was a test that I both passed and then failed last year. I passed most of it and then failed at the very end.
Have you ever heard like him say? I know my dad always say this, like it's either my way or the byway. But in the way of it's the Lord's way or the highway. Yeah. Where does that come from?
I don't know exactly what it comes from, but basically, in our case, it was God wasn't going to share custody over my mind, custody over my soul. He wasn't going to allow my family.
You can't serve two masters, kind of.
Yeah, basically. And God spent a long time basically saying, no, You don't realize it, but you're serving two masters. You need to serve me. And that was hard.
Hard soul mind.
That was really hard. It still has been, because when you really are, like, when it's like way back in your psyche and you don't realize you're doing it, those are the hardest, because you tend to respond with emotional responses and you don't know why. Like for me, I don't know if it's just the masculine urge not to be a drain on anyone's resources, but God put me through a whole stage of my life for the last 4 years where I was in constant need. And boy, that broke my pride in ways you couldn't imagine. My desire to function independently. And God led me to realize it was because I desperately didn't want to drain my parents' resources. And I realized God was unhappy with that because it was distracting me from what he wanted me to do. And from
there was a fear aspect of it too.
No, it was more, I'm sure there was fear involved. You're not wrong. I've talked to you about this. It was, I was so concentrated on not draining my dad's resources that I would like ignore God's call on my life because it might not make enough money. Is the best way to put it, I think. And I got to this point, I'm like, why am I so worried about if my dad gets to go on his third cruise this year or not, right? That wealth, my dad's not rich by any means, but he's rich from my perspective, if you get my meaning, but he's not rich in any sense. But it's like God was reminding me that he gave my dad those resources in the end, that my dad was just a steward over that. And if God said that was going to go somewhere else, that was God's business, not my dad's.
Well, it helped too, like your parents were.
And I'm laying that all out there because God put me in a position where I saw the darkness in my family. And more to the point, like, to get through my thick skull, that meant he had to put me in a constant state of not being able to take care of myself and my family financially. And till I would trust him properly in those times and do his will, even if it felt like to me I wasn't at least working towards independence, if that makes sense. Not wasting my dad's resources and my parents' resources were somehow more important to me than God. Boomers are going to have a lot to answer for that, because God doesn't take that kind of shit lightly. And my dad wasn't even that bad compared to some of the other boomers I've heard about on SG and I've seen around me. But he got me to the point without even realizing where I was more scared about spending his money than serving God. And now, ironically, God's put me in a position where, though it's difficult, I am independent enough. We haven't had to have his help. And we actually had to cut him off. And that was hard.
Both of our
spread the wealth. Yeah. I mean, we're not, don't get me wrong. Just a few weeks ago, we had to put groceries back in the cart because we didn't have enough money.
But
God's come through every time.
Through each time, and we hasn't had to use our parents. Yeah. I mean, the fact that he says there'll be, it won't be in need.
Yeah, he's. And it's funny.
How does that look like?
Yeah. Can relate. Yeah. It was really fascinating to see those memes about like the millennials, like,
those hurt so bad, so close to home.
It was like, my family, or my parents at this stage, we'll buy our fourth house, whatever. Me at this stage trying to buy bread. I will never recover from this. I was literally that meme. There were times I was looking at my price and going, I can't afford to buy both tortillas and bread for what my wife wants to make. No yummy muffins, yeah.
I remember there was one time where like had nothing in the fridge, something whatever, and I'm like, well, I'll make biscuits because you didn't need milk for it. You don't need, well, you kind of do need milk, but you don't need eggs for biscuits.
And we were all out of eggs.
And we're all out of eggs and everything, and was, you know, everything was getting bared.
It was like 1 or 2 more days before I got paid. Yeah. It's funny shit.
But we ate. The kids ate. That's what, you know.
Yep. And yeah, it was a very long process to God getting me to this point where He was demanding this get made. And yeah, I want there to be a whole generation of Christian young men who view life as a complete war that they're fully devoted to. Because you know what? The other side has managed to create generations of evil against us. Family lines of complete evil that we see. And God's more powerful than all that. God can make generations of good against evil. Generations of fighters against evil. And this is just a small piece of that. Just another chink in the armor, another stone being pushed down the ledge towards Christianity regaining what they are, regaining their fight. A lot of my stuff here, I feel really strongly about this, and God's implosion is what happens after we win, because I know we're going to win. And we're talking before Revelations. I know we're going to win this fight. We're going to make another Christendom. It's going to happen. I'm already worried about what happens after that. Because I could see everything starting again. And I don't want that happening again. And the only way it's not going to happen, or it's going to be a different cycle or be a little different, is if we start now preparing our kids and our great-grandkids, like warning them of what we experienced. You know, we may be weak in a lot of ways, but you know what? Our generation of millennials and Gen Z, and we're so good at seeing all of this manipulation now because it's all been in our face. Like the kind of stuff that we can call out now, 2 generations back, they would have just, oh, you're crazy. You're overthinking it, man. What are you talking about? Putting poison in vaccines? Come on. Right? You know, or what are you talking about? A rape island? Come on, son. You're just taking things over the edge a little bit. Right? And we need to share that with Third Eye. Like we need to be putting this into written form for those generations that are going to be running into this again. Because, you know, we're getting to the point, that stage in the cycle, where it's going to be physical violence. The devil going, oh, you're rebelling against me. You're rebelling against the rebels. I'm going to murder all of you. We're getting into that stage. He's preparing it now. He's getting his barbarians ready. He's just stirring them up, getting them ready for Christendom, trying to wipe it out before it can remake itself. And he's going to fail. I already see it. But after that, after he's done trying to kill us, then comes the seeds that he's already planted. Like, okay, the devil is not as far-reaching as God. As I pointed out, right? When the temptations, he didn't know what was going on with Christ. He knew he was the Messiah. He knew what he was. He didn't know what he was doing, and he was trying to feel him out and figure it out. But he is long range in thinking. I already see him planting the evil seeds, the seeds that will lead to the destruction of our great-grandchildren. And it's driving me nuts seeing it there. And sometimes I feel kind of powerless being a lone little voice, lone little head that saw it, lone little voice, the little gods told me about it and pushed me down this route. And I feel, sometimes I feel so powerless trying to warn, but that's why it's important that we think about it now, so that later on, when those generations that are geared towards war and are good at it and have fought and have pushed evil back don't have any of the defense against the manipulation tactics. the little Jewy, like, oh, just let us in.
Well, like, just think about how the churches were during COVID. But then that one church with a Polish pastor, right?
Yeah, just told them to get lost. You guys remember that? Just yelling at the jackboots to leave, and they did.
I think you see how fear really came in.
Yeah. I don't know what you're saying there, Skydog. You?
Elaborate?
I'm sure he will in a moment. Maybe he's fighting over his keyboard with his wife or something. Say it while rubbing.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Got it. Right. You take the generation that fought World War I and the generation that fought World War II. Those guys were geared towards war. They knew how to fight. They knew how to sacrifice. But you know what they weren't geared for? Dealing with the Jewy, the evil subversion that came in and destroyed everything that they fought for, right? And they didn't even understand. They weren't even fighting for that. They were tricked into those fights that they didn't need to take. And that's what's going to happen all over again if we don't share our experiences and we don't push it into writing and we don't push it down to the next generations. I don't know how much of this cycle can be bucked. I don't know if it just turns into another cycle or if we can just shorten the cycle so that that period of faster. Yeah, that period of, oh, we're being tricked is smaller and less destructive. And that because I brought that up in that other lesson. The man of war is acutely ill-equipped for dealing with the dangers of art. They don't see how it's dangerous, the propaganda. They just don't see it. They don't, even as it's manipulating them, they don't see it. But on the other side, the man of art, the craftsman and all that, they really undervalue the man of war and really undervalue the fact, or don't seem to comprehend the fact that if the devil can just walk in and kill you, that's what he's going to do. Like if he doesn't feel like he can manipulate you or corrupt you or use you in some way, he's just going to walk in and kill you if he can. Remember the toddlers in Bethlehem. When he pulls it off, he just does it. Remember all the Christians who died to the Mongols, all the Christians who died slaves to Islam, all of the Christian lands that were destroyed, and even the memory of Christianity is gone. Alexandria used to be like as powerful as Rome and Constantinople. The bishop in Alexandria was like another pope. It was a back in the day. It was a 3 system, like a Triforce. If I could bring Zelda into this, I might have played that with my kids earlier. But literally, you had the Pope, you had the patriarch of the Coptic Church, and then you had the Bishop of Alexandria. They were 3 parts of equal power. And then the devil, what did he do?
Tried to separate them.
He tried to destroy them one at a time while turning them on each other. Right? That's exactly what he did. And so all of North Africa, by the way, Egypt, Palestine, all of that was Christian. All of it was Christian. Intensely Christian, by the way, until the Islamic barbarian invasions. And now even the memory of those Christians aren't there anymore. Their artifacts are destroyed. Their churches are completely eradicated and have mosques built on top of them. Their achievements have been attributed to Islam and not to those Christian nations. It's a frustrating experience, knowing that, right? And you try to warn people, but it's current year for everybody, right? They can't think of a time when Islam didn't exist, because there was a time when Islam didn't exist. There was a time when Islam was just in the Arabian Peninsula. But, right. When he can't do that, when he can't just kill you and erase your very existence from the history books, he manipulates and goes for the manipulation game. And generally, we're talking that he's planted seeds of it generations before. in our case, generations before, he's planting the seeds of tolerance. I brought it up before, stuff in the bear community and stuff. Seeds of paganism, seeds of witchcraft, seeds of stuff. Just little elements there that he can pull at the right moment when people aren't expecting an attack from that direction. But remember, as I say this, God beat the devil at his own game. The cross, and we'll get into that heftily in the next semester, was God doing the same thing, planting the seeds throughout history, getting delayed, having some seeds die, but slowly but surely getting the devil to go in and jump headfirst into a trap, beating the devil at his own game, and doing it so thoroughly that this cosmic slap is going to be one of the, like, How I Met Your Mother is probably one of the most hedonistic, disgusting shows I've ever watched.
Just the title of
it
sounds hedonistic.
Hilarious, but it is hedonistic. And honestly, you should keep your kids away from it as hard as you can, because it is so funny and so well written that it's hedonistic stuff just gets sucked in. And you might say, oh, but eventually they get married. No, the whole point is they party as long as they can before they get married. That's the whole point, the party. You get that? But nonetheless, there is this whole funny segue where, due to some bets and some other things, one of the characters, who is a giant, a massive man, has the right to slap a smaller man anytime he wants, as hard as he can, at any unexpected interval.
Where did he fly?
Well, the funny thing is, this is over a period of seasons and like years in the space.
So the slap didn't happen till like season 5. Yeah, I've never seen this.
No, but like it's a continuation process throughout the whole thing. So there comes to a point where they're all partying and having fun. And there's like this crazy Thanksgiving. There's all this cool stuff happens, and out of nowhere, bam! But he had like 3 more slaps to go. Like, understand, God's done that to the devil. Like, there's these whole segues of these episodes where Barney is losing his mind, trying to get him to like give up his slaps, like trying to negotiate out of the slaps, and he's like freaking out and like terrified of the slaps coming, like the rumor of the slaps. And then finally one day he's not thinking about it, and that's when the slap comes. That's what God has done to the devil. He has gotten him into the point where there is a cosmic slap, an anvil hanging over his head, Looney Tunes style, just waiting to drop one day, and he has no idea when it's going to happen. He knows some of the signs that it'll happen, like if you can imagine, like the creaking of the ropes. He can feel it coming, and he can't, and he's trying to wiggle his way out of it, and he's freaking out.
It's like a roller coaster.
Yeah, right.
Remember?
Yeah, don't know when it's going to, and there's drops. He does, but they're fake drops sometimes. And it doesn't go all the way down, and he's losing his mind. Right? That's how clever God is. That he has beaten the gamma at his own game so thoroughly that he's losing his losing his sanity over this. But, right, you still have to respect what evil is capable of. God may have proven that he's better at all of it, but you still have to respect the seeds of evil that have planted in previous generations to allow the tolerance that will one day allow all of this crap we see to come back with a vengeance. Yeah. Oh, yes. And I have talked about this all too long. You guys are really awesome. Thanks for listening to my incoherent ramblings sometimes and sticking through to the end. I hope I've at least made it semi-clear why this is so important. And I promise to do some proper editing on this lesson. Holy crap. It's so distracting for me. We're actually at the end. The next lesson is our conclusion lesson. I actually thought I had one more lesson to go, but I looked at all my lessons like, oh, shoot, the next one's the last one. Now, I am planning on, we're not going to stop streaming, right? We'll talk about spiritual matters and stuff. I might write up a blog post for each one or something. But we're going to take a pause after the conclusion on the Sunday school lessons till next semester is what I'm going to call it. So you guys can concentrate on your Christmases and New Year's and family stuff. We'll still stream because I want to keep that going. I don't want to, cut you guys out of that. I don't know exactly what we'll stream about. Maybe some side stuff, some one shots, if you will. Some one shots. What is this, a comic book? But you get the point. And
I thought you meant.
No, not that kind of shot. One shot is like a one-off event in a comic book series. Okay. So if that makes sense. And that also gives me time to write out the next semester and whatnot. But I'm not sure when I'll start the next one. Sometime in January, maybe the second or third week of January. I'm leaning towards the third week of January. And we'll go to sometime in May is my plan. And we'll do it all again. And then I think for a summer lessons, if you will, I want to concentrate on specific books of the Bible, especially books that I feel like are underutilized and not read. And for the first one of that, we'll concentrate on Judges for a couple of months. And yeah. That's where we're at. I wanted to give you guys a heads up before we got to the last lesson. And dang, I guess I got to actually come up with I don't know exactly what I'm going to do. I'd like to create a physical booklet of these lessons, but I might wait till we at least have 2 semesters and maybe that one of those summer concentrated stuff, and then put that into one grand lesson plan for people who want to do their own Sunday school stuff and need some, want to follow the curriculum and don't feel like going crazy every few months like I'm doing writing it. Yeah, long-term plans. There you go. Tomorrow I'm going to be putting up the Grizzly Files at last. Sorry that got delayed like crazy. This one's going to be about Dogman, which is fun. Wife doesn't like that at all. She does not appreciate the particular monster. I don't blame her. Yeah, remember Friday we'll be doing the video game stream. It's probably going to be Star Citizen related this time, but I want to start filtering in more games. The new Delta Force thing looks pretty darn cool. Something's finally going to replace Battlefield. I've had nothing to do my Battlefield itch for so long. I'm going crazy. That's okay. Yeah. And we'll get right back into how about the Sonichu medallion? What's this? Art Games. What is this? Is this a creepy thing? Because we just actually have a personal story about a freaking medallion. That was crazy. I had a almost sleep apnea monster attack thing in the previous house when we were getting rid of a gold medallion that she'd inherited. It was crazy.
My mother, I don't even know where she got it from. My mom
used
to have some jewelry given to her. And when you're a young girl, who randomly gives you
I have a request for a topic. I need to write this down, wife. Can you bring me paper and a pen?
Yeah.
I will research this cursed medallion. It sounds like fun. And, since I do this every week, I'm definitely going to need ideas. So anytime you guys have a request or an idea for me to research and do a lesson on, there's pens on my desk if you need to. Okay. Bring them up in these chats, man. Because let me tell you, I'm going to run out of ideas here before, not before you know it. I got a lot to do it, but, if I'm going to be doing this podcast for the foreseeable future, I'm going to need more ideas. Oh my gosh, it's 1 a.m. I'm still gabbing. All right. Interesting story about cursed items and whatnot. There is a certain amount of precedence for it in the Bible. And
don't let anything accessible in your house or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, basically, and we'll get into it with cursed dolls and whatnot.
Oh gosh.
The way the ancients viewed idols, they didn't view the idols themselves being alive. They viewed them as a vessel that the god or the demon or whatever it was would inhabit, and then that's how it might move or do things and do crazy shit. Like, shall we say, a possessed doll.
Or a voodoo doll.
It's almost like the ancients had that concept already. And so you could see all these like ghost hunters and whatnot leaving food items, giving these things attention, looking at them all the time. What are they doing? They're worshiping it, and they don't even realize it. Oddly enough, I should get into that. We won't get into the lesson we already did. There's another lesson to do. There's a whole weird thing of whatever spirit behind certain aspects of this dogma phenomenon actually seem to be doing something similar. And it's pretty insane.
Well, the interesting is like, I don't want to give away too much detail, but
sure,
what we've experienced when we visited.
Oh, the medallion thing?
No.
Visited what? Come here.
That sense of feeling that someone was watching you in the second story.
Oh, that one, yeah. We do need to do a lesson on that spiritual side of dogma.
I hate talking about this.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But on the medallion thing, oddly enough, like I often wondered, like I didn't think about cursed objects, but she inherited a gold coin with a freaking dragon on it.
It looked like fool's gold. When you look at it, it looked like it was fake.
Didn't look at anything special, but it turned out to be real gold.
Well, the night before I sold it, the night before you sold it, I had a weird vision of, you know, how dragon is green, jade in Chinese culture,
right?
And it was, you know, Chinese Buddhist thing. And when you had that and you described it,
and I hadn't seen the medallion at that point. Like we were in a rough spot. We were selling some of her old jewelry and whatnot. And I out of nowhere, I had this strange dream that was not a dream at the same time. It's hard to explain. You know those dreams you get where it's like your mind thinks it's real 100%. I was in that. But it was strange because I was trying to convince some friends of ours of something, and I couldn't recognize their faces. And then the next thing I know, it was this thing. There's this concept that you shouldn't talk about skinwalkers and stuff because it gets their attention. Now, I don't mind doing that too much because I know God's my protection. And if they come here, well, they're going to have to contend with God. And I've done a lot of prayer over this whole area. And
we'll keep doing prayer.
Yeah, we keep doing prayer 100%. And when I did that, it was like something caught.
It kind of like
got it manifest, like whooshed into the door and like sat on my shoulder and like breathed in my ear. And at first, like, because I'd heard stories about dogmen and stuff doing similar things, I was like, the dogman, what? And then it was like I couldn't speak or pray for a little while. And then I finally forced out the prayer, and like it wasn't even like I got angry enough. Like this is why I think you shouldn't discount anger. Anger can be a motivation to get yourself out of a state, out of fear, and into fighting back. And in this case, I got angry enough that this thing had come into my house that I like forced myself to look at it, and then I woke up. And then later on, I realized it wasn't a dogman; it was some kind of dragon. And I'm like, What the hell?
You asked me about it, and I told you what was an opinion of like, well, yeah, I didn't think of anything. I kind of saw something, but I didn't know what it was. I said, yeah, it's a dragon with a ball, with a sphere thing. It's aura.
And then I realized the whooshing sound,
yeah,
and the feeling of like a snake coming up, like a snake dragon, and like breathing in my ear, and like, like just to say,
and like in Mulan, they have literally a dragon on there.
Yeah, and again, the really bad thing about Asian dragons are they are a snake and a dragon, both symbols of the devil. And certain Asian cultures have this feeling that snakes are the messengers of God. Mm-hmm. And what do these dragons do? They often give people power in these Asian cultures. Mm-hmm. Often for sacrifices.
What I really like about what you did, though,
was I sold the medallion the next day. Got rid of that shit.
Too, but you took your experience and you put it in your book.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Anyway, we'll look up this medallion. That's fun. I need to go to bed. I have work in the morning. again. 6 days in a row. Anyway, you guys are awesome. See you guys Saturday. I'll try. I want to start getting more content up during the week, but right now it's so exhausting getting these 3 things up. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know what I could do. But please be praying over us too, because we have some big life stuff coming up. We're not ready to share, but should know more soon enough.
Oh man.
And you guys are awesome, and I need to pray for you guys more. Just all your listeners out there.
And all you creators out there.
Yeah. Love you guys. We'll catch you guys later. And like, subscribe, share, all that business. Comments are great. And yeah, I better go to bed. See you guys. Quick wife, say a joke.
A man walked into a bar and said, ouch.
Well, now my soul hurts.
I got a heart.
Yeah, you did. Good night.